Yeah.
See you. Thanks, dudes. Yeah, we'll,
Yep. Yeah, thanks for having us.
absolutely.
Fun as always.
Okay, no, I gotta stop. I gotta stop. I'm trying to freaking destroy trees here.
Those are my trees to destroy. I'll destroy them later.
Alright, fine, jeez. Relax. Yeah, see, this stretch of line is perfect, man. Look at how fast we can belt out perfectly smooth track. What did those trees ever do to you? They got in the way of my railroad.
It's something called we need more ozone in our atmosphere, okay? We don't need more oxygen. Alright? We need a reason to leave the Earth so we can go into space.
Sir, this is a railroad. Yeah, look at that. Oof, that's really nice. Yeah, perfect. It'll just be a pleasure running down this part of the track. All right, Wards, we're leaving. We'll play this again tomorrow. How the heck are we gonna get to space with all that ozone in the way? All right, guys, I'm just gonna. Actually, no, I got coffee. Let's put the title card up for like a couple minutes here, and then we'll just switch into space news now. All right, Bandit, see you, buddy.
See ya.
Okay. You don't need food? No, I'll eat later. It's fine. Brimo and I meal prepped the other day, so we have like... I have like Tupperwares full of rice, carrots, broccoli, and chicken. So, yeah, no, I'm good. It won't... Yeah. Like, even if I have to eat later, we'll just... You know, it'll take 2 seconds to put it in the microwave. You have Chipotle? Now I'm hungry. Ugh. But I'm already up from my nap. You missed your chance for space news and we'll have to continue to KSP. Oh. I didn't realize on my stream we had to conform to your schedule. My mistake. Jam was having none of that, Doom. Jam, he's just kidding for future reference. He's just being a dick. That's okay. It's okay. We all can't be homeowners like you, man. I like to dream. You didn't? How long have you been doing this again? You know what the messed up part is? I do consider you guys shareholders for the most part. Like that's how I run my stream. Like if you invest in the stream, you know, I do kind of genuinely kind of consider what you know, except for Yarg. We don't listen to Yarg. Yeah, screw that guy. But yeah. Let's see. Let's see what the National Archives has to offer this time around. I haven't seen Yarg in a minute. He was in here yesterday. He was in here yesterday when I was playing Kerbal. Yeah, we're good. At least I think. Pretty sure we are. I'm going to put in a quick one today here, fellas. So, yep. Enjoy the quick video. This is a short one. So, enjoy it. I will be back
When
momentarily.
astronauts stand on the surface of the moon, they will be part of what President Kennedy called the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. But man hasn't arrived there yet. There is still a lot to be learned about this strange, hostile world. As far back as 1959, plans were being made for exploring the surface of the moon with unmanned spacecraft capable of photographing it, analyzing it, and measuring it. In July 1964, Ranger 7 crashed into a remote corner of Mare Nubium, taking over 4,000 pictures of the lunar surface on its way. It took the first close-ups of the moon, and in recognition of this achievement, the area was named Mare Cognitum, sea that has become known. The success of Surveyor 1 is almost legendary. It soft-landed on the moon in the ocean of storms on the 2nd of June, 1966, and returned over 11,000 photographs of soil, rocks, and topography. It showed the color of the moon's surface and recorded the changing temperatures for more than 3 lunar days and nights. Ranger and Surveyor are part of a carefully planned series of missions designed to photograph and explore the moon's surface and to find the best landing sites for Project Apollo, the manned lunar mission. The third of these unmanned missions is Lunar Orbiter, in which an orbiting satellite takes pictures of the moon and transmits them back to Earth. Over 50,000 square miles of the visible moon's surface have been photographed with 100 times better resolution than has been possible with Earth-based telescopes. 6,000 square miles of it nearly 1,000 times better. Lunar Orbiter is best described as an orbiting photographic laboratory. Unlike earlier photo missions, which used a television type of camera, Orbiter takes its pictures on 70mm film. It develops the pictures and stores them until it is time to send them back to Earth. The whole craft is similar to a 4-leaf clover with a thick stem. The leaves contain the solar cells that provide power for the various systems on board. And the stem contains the 2 lenses, the film processing unit, the picture transmission equipment, and the various scientific instruments, such as micrometeorite detectors and radiation counters. At the heart of Lunar Orbiter is the photo system. Pictures are taken simultaneously with the 2 lenses, one close-up and one wide angle. A device called a velocity height sensor determines the speed of the spacecraft relative to the moon's surface, normally over 4,000 miles an hour. As an exposure is being made, it moves the film proportionately to avoid blurring the image. The film then moves into the processor, where it is rolled into contact with a bimat web, a material that has been soaked in a solution that develops and fixes the image. It is then separated from the web and dried. The method of getting the picture from the moon to Earth is one of its most exacting tasks. The film is scanned by a light beam 1/20th as thick as a human hair. As the beam passes through the film, its intensity varies as the density of the image varies, and this variation is detected by a photoelectric cell. This converts the light into electronic signals which are transmitted to Earth. They are then converted back to light, and the picture is reconstructed. Each frame, consisting of one close-up and one wide-angle photo, requires 45 minutes of transmission. A typical Lunar Orbiter mission begins, after all of the checkout procedures have been completed, with the orbiter perched atop an Atlas Agena launch vehicle at Cape Kennedy, protected by a magnesium shroud.
2, 1, 0.
The Atlas ignites, pushing the spacecraft through the thicker atmosphere. After a little more than 5 minutes, the Atlas engines shut down, and the stage separates and falls away, followed in a few seconds by the shroud. The Agena's second stage engine ignites long enough to place the combination into a parking orbit, a temporary one about 100 miles high, where the attached vehicles coast. When they arrive at an acceptable position from which to head for the moon, the Agena's engines ignite for the second time, boosting the spacecraft out of its parking orbit. The Agena then separates, sending the spacecraft on its way to the moon. Then, on command from Earth, the lunar orbiter begins to assume its familiar shape. The solar panels fold out to pick up the sunlight, and the radio antennas are extended for communications with Earth. A sensor locks onto the sun, aiming the panels so they can begin transforming the sun's energy into needed electricity. Several hours later, another sensor, designed to respond to Canopus, the brightest star in the southern sky, picks it out and locks on it. These two lock-ons are necessary so that ground controllers know the position of the spacecraft for future maneuvers. For the next several hours, the course of the spacecraft is carefully plotted against the known path of the moon. A decision can be made that a mid-course correction is required for perfect aiming. This is accomplished by rolling and pitching the spacecraft to the desired attitude and firing the velocity control engine a given period of time, either to speed it up or slow it down relative to the speed and direction of the moon itself. Orbiter 3, for example, was so accurately started on its way that it needed only a 500-mile adjustment in its initial aiming point. The orbiter arrives at the moon at a speed of about 4,500 miles per hour. If this speed is maintained, it will pass the moon and go on into an orbit of the sun. Once again, at the appropriate time, the spacecraft's attitude is adjusted and the engine is fired to slow it down to 2,200 miles per hour. It is attracted by the moon's gravity and swings into lunar orbit. For several days, the controllers study its orbit to determine precisely where it is. Then, for the third time, it is properly oriented and its velocity lowered to drop it down into its picture-taking orbit, ranging from 1,150 miles to about 28 miles.
So it
It
knows
is ready to
where it
start
is.
its photographic mission. The first three orbiters have succeeded in pinpointing the potential landing areas of Apollo, the manned lunar mission. They have returned excellent photographs of the far side of the moon, 10 times better than Earth-based views of the front side. They have surveyed vast areas of the moon with an accuracy never before attainable. They have shown us the ruggedness and the smoothness and some of the complexities of existence in an airless void. They have shown us the Earth as it appears from the moon and opened our eyes to the possibilities of planets like Venus being capable of supporting life. They have shown us our Surveyor spacecraft on the surface and Ranger in it. They have given scientists a wealth of material that will take years to interpret properly.
Note
They
how
have
he said,
assured us that micrometeorites in the vicinity of the moon are hardly more hazardous than near Earth.
notice how he said Ranger was in the surface.
Exact size and shape of the
You
moon
know you know.
and accurately defined its gravitational field and its mass.
It's pretty cool, Couch, right? Erosion? No,
Because
Ranger.
results of the basic mission have been achieved, other accomplishments
Impacted.
have been made possible. The first lunar orbiters, for instance, surveyed 1/2% of the moon's
Interesting,
face.
Thomas.
Orbiter 4, in a polar orbit at a higher altitude, photographed 99% of the near lunar surface at a resolution 10 times better than that available before.
That's right, Couch. Yeah, Ranger
A
hit
team
the
of
moon in the
scientists
face.
has outlined over 400 sites they feel are of great scientific interest, many requiring oblique photos, like the startling Copernicus pictures, giving us a different perspective on the lunar surface.
That's cool, man. They did this with analog equipment, man. Can you believe that?
Lunar Orbiter, along with Ranger and Surveyor, have added significantly to our knowledge of the moon and its origins. And what is more important, they have provided a solid foundation upon which to base the important decisions that will give our total lunar exploration program meaning and direction in the future.
The end. Cool. All right, good archival video right there. Yeah, I love these old films. Couch Router, I show them every day during break. I show films right off the U.S. National Archives, so it's all public domain. You can watch it. You don't have to worry about getting copy struck anywhere, which is pretty cool. The end. Yeah, in lowercase Helvetica. Tell me you're from the 70s without telling me you're from the 70s. Lowercase Helvetica, all day. Check out Discord for some fun pictures. What channel did you post them into? Futura is the best font? I'm a Helvetica fanboy just because it was on the side of the space shuttle. I love the NASA branding from the 70s, to be honest with you. Like the worm logo and the Helvetica backing behind it. I think that looks amazing. Oh, Tiger, you DM'd them to me. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you never really realize how big the thing is until you're right next to it. Yeah. See? Hey, Jordan, what's going on? You never realize how big it is until you're right next to the damn thing. And then you're like, oh, well, okay. Hope all is well? Yeah, everything's good. Ted, you got sub, dude. You can post. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it. But yeah, you can post. Yeah, look at it. It's freaking huge. That's Arian 5, dude. That's Arian 5. Okay, so, all right. So, Tiger, you've seen Arian 5. Now, if we go into the patented Rockets of the World chart, right? No, I don't want to see your website. I don't care about that. All right, so you look at Rockets of the World, right? You got Mercury down here. You have School Bus. I don't know when we launched that into space, but all right. You have the R7, Atlas LV3, which is Mercury Atlas. And then, look, Ariane 5. Ariane 5 is pretty down there on the list, but look at it compared to some of these guys down here. Look at it compared to the shuttle. Compared to Buran, compared to Starship, Saturn V. It's tiny. Look at it for SLS Block 1, even Delta IV Heavy, even Falcon Heavy. That's a small rocket. Huh. Crazy, huh? Was Pentium even a thing back then? No. No. Dude, during Mercury and the Atlas program, Jester, they were flying with a wire harness that's more similar to an automobile, like infotainment. So there was like maybe actually not even pre infotainment. This is like 1980s automobile wiring. The Gemini capsule was analog. It was analog, like an airplane. I mean, everything is controlled by a computer nowadays, but Gemini capsules were analog. You want to rendezvous two spacecraft together? No, there's no like flight computer that you have a guy, you control the thrusters. It's like the Gemini capsules and the Apollo capsules are like playing Kerbal in real life when you can actually die. Like that's why the Gemini program, even though it's like super underrated, was super vital because they had to figure out all this stuff. Even if you had a computer on the vessel, you're not going to know the math to be able to get the thing where you need it to go. Apollo was one of the first one of the first all digital systems. The Saturn V had a computer controlling the whole thing. It was a primitive computer for the time, but it still was a computer nonetheless. And did they fly with vacuum tubes? Yeah, Gemini would have had vacuum tubes in it. Yeah, exactly. Yep, stuff like that. Tubes, transistors, stuff like that. That's what I mean when I say analog. No digital processor. Apollo was the first spacecraft to fly with a digital processor. And Jester, to kind of like bring it all together, or for anybody else that cares, like, okay, so you see this, right? See the phone? Phone, right? Everybody says like, oh, this has way more processing power than the Apollo spacecraft did. It has like 6 billion times the processing power. But that's not what you should be saying. I mean, it's true. That is a statement of fact. This is way more powerful than the guidance computer that they landed on the moon with. But the guidance computer that they landed on the moon with is the reason this exists. Apollo put digital, computer-controlled, electromechanical kind of systems engineering into high gear. We jumped in technology by about, I don't know, We jumped in technology by about 20 years from the Apollo program. We jumped forward because they needed a computer to control this thing. You could fly to the moon analog, old school, if you really want to. Like, and I say old school, that's like no one ever tried that ever because it's a really bad idea. There's too much stuff going on. There's too many perturbing forces. There's too many things that can hit you or get in the way, or if you miss, if you pull a Michael Bolton, you don't carry over one detail, you miss the moon by 1,000 miles, right? They needed a computer. They needed a digital computer to do it. They needed a computer to control everything to account for that margin of error, and that's what they ended up doing. They ended up developing the first digital freaking computer. Like one of the first digital computers. Like, don't get me wrong, there were digital computers before this, but the digital computers and any computer before this was like the size of a freaking room, right? It was the size of a small automobile. This was a digital computer that could fit inside of a spacecraft that had to be super light. And that took mobile computing to the next level. From there, it was, you notice how like the Apollo program happened, then all of a sudden home PCs came in out of nowhere in the 70s, like right after the Apollo program. Some guys started building computers in their freaking garage. They started building damn computers in their garage with a digital processor and started selling them, and they named their company after a fruit. Apple. There you go. Personal computers became a thing, and then everybody needed a computer. A computer is easier doing things. And then in the 90s, they came up with the idea of linking all these damn computers together based off of a missile net from the phone lines. Right? Like, you can trace everything right back to Apollo, which is pretty cool. That's really neat. People ask me, I get asked all the time, like, oh, what has NASA done for me? Yeah, that phone in your pocket wouldn't be here. You'd have like a typewriter or something, or let's say a computer from the 90s right now if it wasn't for the Apollo program. The advancements made in personal computing and digital processing from the Apollo program, we jumped 20 years. We jumped 20 years, straight up. Yeah, exactly, Blue, right? Yeah. And they got to the point where rockets have so many different computers, the size of cell phones, doing thousands of things what the Apollo program computers did. Yep. Oh, yeah, a computer that fits into a single room. Yeah, you'd still have your Nokia SDX. Yep. And then you forget to set the clock right. I stumbled on this channel mid-rant, and this is the most fascinating thing I've seen on Twitch. Thanks, Gav. I appreciate it. I'm a STEM streamer, dude. That's what I do. I teach people about space. I don't know what gave it away. I'm kind of a big space fan. And I'm not talking about, like, even though this is a vital aspect of space, I'm not talking about, like, oh, look at the stars and stuff. No. Like, how the stuff works. Like, the mechanics behind it. Like, avionics and how rockets work, how the propulsion works. Like, real Apollo program stuff. That's really where I'm at. Like, I mean, not just Apollo program. I know most space programs, but I take it the reentry simulator would be worth trying out. Yeah, reentry's cool. But yeah, see how tough it is to fly it by hand. Now, keep in mind, reentry with the shuttle, the space shuttle's a little bit easier. Do you know why reentry with a space shuttle's easier? Well, it has what's called more cross-range distance. Why does it have more cross-range distance? It has wings. Pretty straightforward stuff. It has wings, so it can fly. Yeah. I've played reentry off stream, Blue. Cool pick of an old school gyro. Oh yeah, look at that thing. I think I see it. Yeah. Oh yeah, look at it. Looks like a space core from Portal. Why haven't we played it on stream? I don't know. It's easier to explain in Kerbal? I don't know. Yeah, Ted, Curious Mark on YouTube has a really awesome series about the Apollo guidance computer, namely because he got one and dude, that is so cool. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. Linus has one, Smarter has one. Luke Taylor. Yeah, my favorite one is from Curious Mark. There's a YouTube channel out there where the guy got an Apollo guidance computer. He got an actual Apollo computer. It was a spare from the Apollo program, the real one. Like, this is a flight hardware extra spare that we don't need. He got his hands on one. I still don't know how. Well, I believe he explains it. And the guy slaved it to a computer, right? He used a Raspberry Pi to be able to take the outputs from the AGC and input it to the inputs of a computer with reentry on it. And they had a mod for reentry for landing on the moon. And he used the Raspberry Pi and wrote up a bit of code that interpolates the output signal from the AGC to the input to the computer. And he made the AGC land a LEM on the moon in reentry, which is, or actually maybe it was orbiter. It was probably orbiter. It wasn't reentry. It was orbiter. That is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and it did it too. It freaking did it. It landed it perfectly. I'm like, what? Curious Mark is the name of the channel. It is an awesome series. It's one of my favorite. Dude, it's real nerd stuff, Gav. It's real nerd stuff, dude. it's like, dude, it is real nerd stuff. Hey, Ismic, what's going on? How you doing? Yeah. Here, I'll show you, dude. It is righteous. I'm like, that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Curious Mark is the name of that channel. It's a really awesome tech channel. I know Linus has done stuff and Destin has too. Yeah. But yeah, the AGC stuff is gnarly. I don't know how he got his hands on the AGC. I forget. But yeah, this guy messes with old computers and stuff. It's so freaking cool. I'm trying to find it. Oh yeah, dude. There was like a follow-up to that. The S-band communications. He got the antennas from Apollo. I don't know how this guy gets all this stuff, but you know what? I'm not gonna ask questions. It's really freaking cool to see. Space hardware. Apollo guidance computer restoration. There you go. So let's get down to the. I'll just show you the very, very, very end. Look. Right here, let me show you the intro. I'll just show you the intro. There it is. See the aluminum box right there? And then this is the control panels that would have been inside the LEM. There's the computer output. It's primitive because it's a bunch of 7-segment displays. But dude, this homeboy straight up wired this all together. That is the coolest freaking thing I've ever seen. Dude, how did you, what a genius, man. That's so damn cool. Yeah, I don't like showing like full YouTube stuff on here sometimes. I mean, sometimes we do, but yeah, here, I'll give you guys the plug for the channel. Go check it out. It's really cool. That's a really awesome channel. Yeah, I still can't believe the guy did it. It's freaking magical. Alright, so let's get into space news, fellas. Let's see what we got. There's a couple of things here and there. There was a presser. There was a press conference about SLS that you guys might want to hear a little bit about. Yeah, there's that. Okay, Jeff Faust has a thread here on the press conference. Let's go in there. Jeff Faust is reporting a lot of good space news today. And then, yeah, I mean, most of space news today is going to be centering around that SLS press conference. Yeah. Okay. Last for a quick thing about the re-entry game. There's multiplayer in re-entry now, by the way. One person in the spacecraft with others acting as the mission controllers. That's kind of cool. The interfaces between simulator and the actual hardware. Yeah, I know, Gav. It's crazy, right? Crazy. Yeah. So, like, I don't do stuff like that on here, which is why I'm, like, saying, like, go check out Mark, but I don't know that guy, actually. I'm just curious, Mark. YouTube channel. It's just, I don't know him, and just thought it was a really cool channel. But I teach people about stuff like that. Yep. Yeah, I try to get people interested in spaceflight because you know what? Spaceflight is cool. Yeah, spaceflight's really cool. It's actually cold up there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's actually not cold. It's vacuum. But no, I've been doing this for a good while here on Twitch. Almost a decade. Yeah, I know. And I think I've boiled down my entire another propellant joke. I've boiled down my entire liking of spacecraft to or anything is to just I like things that go fast. Yeah, I like things that go fast. Spacecraft go the fastest, so I like spacecraft the most. No, Flakin, I haven't, but that's cool. Probably he knows you too. I don't know. It's actually both really hot and really cold at the same time. Bingo. Yep. I'm an old fart and twitcher. Dude, I'm ancient in streamer years. I predate the term influencer, okay? That's not what they were called. They were just called streamers when I started. Now everybody's an influencer or a content creator. I predate that term too. Influencer. I'm not any of those. I just stream STEM content and people enjoy it. I predate frigging Twitch. That's right. You're not wrong. Justin TV old? My account is. Well, no, that's not entirely true. I was on Justin TV watching StarCraft streamers in 2010 and 2011, and I made an account right when it switched to Twitch TV. If you look at how old my account is. Yeah. But anyway. Alright, let's see what else we got. And GabJam got gifted a sub, dude. Thanks, Neuro. I appreciate it, man. So, it's been 84 years. All right, Thomas, we're gonna start with this. Yep. Yeah. Gonna start with that. That was seen leaving Boca Chica today, and I must say, as a Ford truck connoisseur, I approve. I approve of this. Mine's cooler than his, though. But his is a step-side bed, which is step-side, fleet-side OBS, which is, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. Anyway, yep. Thank you for that update there, Thomas. A man of culture, I see. All right. Are we going to mention Draco Phase 2 is brewing? Is that the green truck? It's not the green truck. The green truck is a quad cab long bed, F350. No, there's a couple of dudes around Boca Chica with old Fords like that, like mine. Yeah, there's that one, the short bed step side, and then there's the short bed step side, and then there's a green one that is a quad cab, so it's got 4 doors, and it's got that's a 6-foot box. It's got an 8-foot box like mine. All right. Nuclear. Oh, very good. Nuclear propulsion. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, cool. I have that as an article here. We'll start off with the SLS press stuff. I'm looking for one with a 7.3. Yeah, Staples, 7.3. The IDI is a good motor. It's a good motor. It's just when they switched to the power suck, then, yeah, they started to get bad. You're a double cab. Wrecked. All right, so NASA's holding a media call about SLS and the planned wet dress rehearsal dates at July. Yep, okay. Yep, all right, yep. Wet dress rehearsal at 39B. Cool. Jim Free. Let's see. We're working to make a new wet dress rehearsal attempt in early to mid-June, looking at a couple periods in August for an Artemis 1 launch. Yeah, it's dependent on lunar phasing. It turns out the rocket that you launch to the moon needs to be in the right spot or you'll miss. Yeah, timing, that's important. That's why it's like, oh, mid-June or August, you know, like it's not mid to late June or early August. It goes from mid-June to August, like late August. Anyway, so this is, I'm just going to read through this and I'll explain all of it in a second. The check valve in the upper stage has been replaced. piece of rubber appeared to be holding it open. Not sure yet of the source. Uh-oh. You know what? Let's, I'm gonna go find that media teleconference because, yeah, it would probably be better. It'd probably be better to listen. Alright, let's go. This media teleconference was just like a couple hours ago. Ah, see? This is the good old music. We could try to guess answers, Blue, if you want. Sure. You want to play the guess answers game? See how good EJ is at this? We could do that. Sure. You think that's the guitar that you play like this? Or do you think it's just a slide? Your interest in space exploration is important to us. Please stay on the line. Welcome to the NASA Hold channel. All of our operators are currently busy answering questions from the press. The next available operator will be with you soon. I like it, Gab. This NASA Hold music is good, man. I'll tell you in a second, Grumpy. Oh, that's the end of that. Okay. So, what I like to do is I like to gauge how good I am at understanding spaceflight. And I'm not afraid to get stuff wrong. I'm not afraid to get it wrong on stream. I don't care. It's not about me being right. It's about understanding it correctly. So, we play a game. I started doing this a little while ago, and the game is basically when the press asks the NASA engineers questions about the rocket, I try to answer them, and then we listen to the response, and chat kind of gauges if I'm right or not. Once again, the exercise here is for you guys to laugh at me when I get it wrong, first and foremost, and really see if I really understand what they're talking about. It's kind of it's a measure of effectiveness for me. Yeah, so, I mean, the plus side is that you guys get to laugh at me when I don't get it right. That's right, Gav. Then it makes good content too, dude, yeah.
Arrive back until the question and answer session is by today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. All participants are in listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. At that time, you may press star 1 to ask a question. I would now like to turn the call over to Catherine Hamilton.
There you go, Warrens. Right on. All right, here we go.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Catherine Hamilton with NASA's Office of Communications. NASA's SOS rocket and Orion spacecraft arrived back at Kennedy's Vehicle Assembly Building April 26th after a 10-hour journey from the launch pad 39B. Since their arrival, teams have worked to make repairs and perform additional checkouts while the spaceport supplier of gaseous nitrogen makes upgrades to their system to support Artemis 1 activities. Here to talk with us about the path forward are Jim Free, Associate Administrator for the Exploration Systems Development Mission Director at NASA headquarters in Washington, and Chris Lanham, Senior Vehicle Operations Manager for NASA's Exploration Ground Systems Program at Kennedy. After brief opening comments from each of our speakers, we'll take your questions. You can enter star 1 on your phone to be entered into the question queue at any time. Your phones are on mute now, and the operator will open your mic when you're ready and close your mic after you ask your question. We ask that you please stick to one question and identify to whom your question is directed. And shortly after we conclude, You can listen to a replay of this teleconference online. So first we will hear from Jim Spree. Jim?
Great. Thanks, Catherine, and good afternoon, everybody. I really appreciate your continued interest in Artemis and in this case specifically Artemis 1. And I'm here to make sure that you have the chance to hear from me today about where things are at. I'm usually not the type to shy away from giving the folks that really do the hard work the chance to have a break,
Hey, Vulcan.
which is what we're trying to do today. But it looks like Cliff drew the short straw and it's
Really
here
go
with me
for us.
today to answer the tough questions. So let's first talk about rolling back. Rolling back to the
Nice.
VAB was absolutely the right thing to do to really work through several issues that we found at the pad, as well as to let our partners at Air Liquide do the work they need to do on the repairs for the nitrogen. And I'll remind everybody, we have a clean pad philosophy on this program and with KSC, so that really limits our some of the access we have out at the pad. So yet another reason that we decided to roll back. The repairs at Air Liquide are progressing on track and currently scheduled to complete and do our verification soon, which will be to the actual conditions for both wet dress and launch, probably around the May 11th timeframe. Our United Launch Alliance partner did replace the check valve over the weekend, and we inspected the valve and did find a small piece of rubber that was preventing this check valve from sealing correctly. And we are looking at the sources that debris could have come from. We didn't see any issues at all with the valve, which is really good news. And Cliff can talk more about some of the additional testing that we're doing. On the hydrogen leak that we saw when we went from slow to fast fill during the last wet dress, we've narrowed that down to a couple causes, and Cliff and his team are continuing to work through those this week, and I know he'll talk about how that work is progressing as well. Relative to schedule, so we're still looking at the schedule as Cliff and his folks work through things, and that schedule when we can get back out to the pad. And we're looking right now at that next wet dress in the early to mid-June timeframe. We may update that as the other work progresses. Some of these things are a constraint to roll back out, so we need to look at how that work goes, and certainly we'll continue to keep you updated on that work and the schedule. I'm sure you heard the administrator and associate administrator mention the possibility of that that August Artemis 1 launch during their Crew 4 news conference last week. And as we've been saying, we'll set that official launch date after we get through wet dress. But based on some of the historical challenges from similar programs over the years and the schedule performance that we've seen thus far, we are looking at a couple launch periods through the August timeframe. That schedule has margin in it in the work that we do, and also to allow us to do 2 wet dress rehearsal attempts if we need them. We are optimistic that we only need 1 more based on everything we've been able to do thus far to fine-tune our tanking procedures. But we also want to be realistic and upfront with you that it may take more than 1 attempt to get the procedures where we need them for a smoother launch count that gives us the best chance to making our launch windows when we get to the launch day. Tom Whitmire in the past has talked about the intricate choreography of all the variables involved with tanking a new rocket for the first time, and I know Charlie Blackwell Thompson and Mike Serafin have talked a bit about how activities compare with programs like the Space Shuttle and Saturn V. So I want to share a few of the historical facts that folks have pulled together. For Apollo, there was a test vehicle that was used to do wet dress and ring out the systems, both flight and ground. That was out at the pad with multiple wet dress rehearsals for about 5 months. Apollo 4 rolled out to the pad in August of '67 and did a countdown demonstration test. Did an initial tanking in early October and finally completed the test in mid-October and launched in early November. For the shuttle, it rolled out to the first pad at the end of December in 1980 and did separate hydrogen and oxygen tanking in late January and a countdown demonstration test in mid-February with flight readiness firing all the way on the 20th of February. They also conducted a tanking test in late March, ran into a few issues, and did another attempt in late March as well. That next tanking was for launch, and after a scrub on April 10th, finally launched April 12th. So you get a sense that with the shuttle, in this case being at the pad like 3.5 months, and the time the Apollo test vehicle was at the launch pad, it is a challenge to work these new systems and these complicated vehicles. So, you know, we certainly own where our program is, but I think we're in family of where we've been in the past. So with that, let me turn it over to Cliff to let you know about the work that is happening in the VAB today and what we're going to do to get back to the pad to move us forward.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. So the Space Launch System rocket with the Orion spacecraft arrived back at the Vehicle Assembly Building on April 26th, as was mentioned. And then our teams really got to work, and we've done a lot of work to get the rocket ready to roll back out to the launch pad. So far, we've replaced the faulty helium check valve that was located on the interim cryopropulsion stage. That's the second stage. And as Jim mentioned, it's been sent over for inspection, and we're still diving into the root cause there of the contamination that was holding the check valve open. We're planning on testing the newly installed check valve later this week if we get to a resolution on that root cause and get the clearance to go ahead and hook everything back up and test. For the most part, the hardware is about, I would say, 80% installed, and we're looking to finish up the installation of the hardware this afternoon internal to the vehicle, and then we'll await that final go from the technical team to say that we're good to go ahead and test. Aside from the check valve, our teams have also performed tests to determine where the hydrogen leak on the tail service mast umbilical was coming from. And again, that umbilical is located on the mobile launcher and connected to the core stage of the rocket. So we've conducted leak checks on all the joints in that area. And what we've determined is that the compression on the gasket, basically that's between the flanges of the fill line, we're relaxing, which basically alleviated some of the torque and loosened up the bolts, and hence we feel that's probably your most likely cause of the leak there. So what we've done is we've been performing retorques in 30-hour increments. That's a shuttle lesson learned that we've incorporated, and so they have been retorquing. And right as of this time, the hydrogen TSMU is complete, and we also went ahead and looked at similar designs on the other umbilicals. So the core stage intertank umbilical, as well as the oxygen tail service mass umbilical, have a very similar design. So we went ahead and we've also retorqued those arms. As of now, we haven't detected any leaks, but again, that's not uncommon when trying to detect leaks at air temperature instead of the super cold temperatures of the cryogenics. When we load at the launch pad. But again, we feel we've done what we can do at this point. The next test will be when we flow cryos out at the launch pad. We've also performed some other closeout work on areas of the rocket that we would need to do in any case. And we've been doing work to try and avoid any kind of interference with our main effort, which was to fix the issues we had that constrained wet dress rehearsal and get back out to the pad as quickly as possible. So, but we have been able to accomplish other work in parallel. So that's been a great effort by the team. Also, as was mentioned earlier, the gaseous nitrogen supplier, Air Liquide, that supplies us nitrogen, has been upgrading its facility to meet our requirements for our next wet dress rehearsal. And as of now, as Jim mentioned, they're on target for a May 9th completion of their effort of the mods and their testing, and then there will be a extended test performed to make sure it meets the SLS and Orion requirements that we'll need for WDR, wet dress rehearsal, as well as launch. So once we complete all this major work, we'll retract all our working platforms inside the VAB, close out the volumes in the vehicle that we had to go into when we came back to the VAB. I'd like to reference this stop in the VAB as a pit stop. Come back in, do what we need to do, and get back out to the pad as quickly as possible. So, and we're working hard to meet that goal and try to roll out in the mid to late May timeframe, as we basically stated when we rolled back. That was our target. And with that, I'll pass it back to Catherine.
Thank you, Cliff. We'll now begin the question and answer portion. Please stick to one question and identify to whom it is directed.
Here's the fun part. But okay, so at 19 minutes. Fellas, I want to hear that thing about torquing bolts one more time, if you don't mind. I didn't get all of it.
Another attempt in late March, we've to move it.
April 26th, as was mentioned, that was located on the interim cryopropulsion stage. That's the second stage.
I just want to listen to this part again.
As Jim mentioned, it's been sent over for inspection, and we're still diving into the root cause there of the contamination that was holding the check valve open. We're planning on testing the newly installed check valve later this week if we get to a resolution on that root cause, and get the clearance to go ahead and hook everything back up and test. For the most part, the hardware is about, I would say, 80% installed, and we're looking to finish up the installation of the hardware this afternoon, internal to the vehicle, and then we'll await that final go from the technical team to say that we're good to go ahead and test. Aside from the check valve, our teams have also performed tests to determine where the hydrogen leak on the tail mast umbilical was coming from. And again, that umbilical is located on the mobile launcher and connected to the core stage of the rocket. So we've conducted leak checks on all the joints in that area, and what we've determined is that the compression on the gasket, basically that's between the flanges of the fill line, were relaxing, which basically alleviated some of the torque and loosened up the bolts, and there, hence we feel that's probably your most likely cause of the leak there. So what we've done is we've been performing retorques in 30-hour increments. That's a shuttle lesson learned that we've incorporated, and so they have been torquing and the gasket. Basically, that's between the flange. Checks on all the joints in that area, and what we've determined is that the compression on the gasket, basically that's between the flanges of the fill line, were relaxing, which basically alleviated some of the torque and loosened up the bolts, and there, hence we feel that's probably your most likely cause of the leak there. So what we've done is we've been performing retorques in 30-hour increments. That's a shuttle lesson learned that we've incorporated, and so they have been torquing, and right as of this time, the hydrogen TSMU is complete, and we also went ahead and looked at similar designs on the other umbilicals. So
okay, those, they weren't torqued to spec. They weren't torqued right. They pinched the gasket. So okay, this has to do with a little bit of mechanics, fellas. And I know it's gonna be like, what do you mean you didn't try to, dude? The tolerances here have to be very, very tight with when you're dealing with hydrogen. SLS in the core stage, and this is a hydrogen umbilical. It uses liquid hydrogen. That's very, very volatile stuff. Now, why is hydrogen volatile? Well, it blows up really, really nicely. Ask the Hindenburg. Yeah, it blows up really nice. Second thing is, hydrogen when it's in liquid form is easy to manage. It's not that bad. The thing is, it's hard to manage hydrogen. It's hard to keep hydrogen a liquid. It is a very, very nominal temperature window, a very small nominal temperature window that hydrogen stays as a liquid. So basically heating it up at all will turn it to gas. And when it turns to gas, well, gaseous H2 or GH2 for short, gaseous hydrogen, the molecule is very, very, very small. It will leak out of everything that you aren't 100% sure. So, torquing this gasket down, these two flanges on the fill line, right? Torquing them down, even if they over-torqued it just a little bit, like I'm talking maybe like even an eighth of a turn too much torque, that could pinch the gasket enough to when when the hydrogen starts flowing, everything gets super chilled and everything gets cold and it compresses, right? And if you over-torqued it just a little bit, you pinch that gasket, right? When everything gets cold, everything really likes to, freeze up, right? And when it freezes up, everything kind of pinches a little bit. And if you pinch the gasket too much, when you start to flow hydrogen, it won't seat correctly. It won't fill, and you'll get a leak. Once again, yeah, that's something that would be probably difficult to get right on the first try. But then again, this is a shuttle umbilical, so technical expertise. Once again, there's one of the reasons why SLS is so expensive, because they fired all the shuttle engineers and then hired back a bunch of new guys later and said, "Hey, figure it out." Yeah. But anyway, it sounded like it was torqued to spec, but the the gasket compressed over time with that sustained force loosened the flange. But the compressed gasket over time with the sustained force loosened the flange. Probably also partially due to vibrations on the movements and the thermal cycles. I mean, Rocket Guy, I know about torquing gaskets down from cars. You have to do that with a head gasket on an engine for the combustion chamber and stuff, for ironically the same reasons, so gas doesn't get out. His language was a little broken. Yeah, for what I'm thinking, like somebody may have over torqued the bolts, and if they over torqued it and pinched that gasket too much, right? You start flowing hydrogen through it, everything freezes, and the gasket, because it's pinched, it doesn't seal correctly. Yeah, that's really important. Like, but yeah, I mean, you think that wouldn't take into account thermal cycles, Rocket Guy? I mean, maybe, I don't know. This sounds like they just weren't torqued to spec, because like when you torque something down, like, okay, I'll use head gaskets on a car, all right? So on a car, you have the engine, right here, and then you have the pistons going up and down, and then you have the head. The head has the combustion chamber in it, and there's a huge gasket between the head and the block. You don't torque the gasket down to be within tolerance when the engine is just sitting there. You torque that gasket down to make it to be in tolerance when the engine is warm, because engines get warm because you have a little metal box that has a bunch of explosions going off in it. It gets warm, right? So if you don't torque to spec, or you stretch the bolt too much, you pinch the gasket, and then you'll literally get you'll blow a head gasket. That's what you'll do. The gasket is metal. It could be. I don't know about the hydrogen one. If it's rubber and you pinched it too much, it's going to freeze in that position. But yeah. Just like you said, just sounded like he was saying the gasket being compressed, and the compressed things was not to be compressed. That force over time loosened the flange. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that would come from over torquing too, no? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, exactly, Mondred. 6-degree nominal window. Yeah, it's not a lot. You go too far in one direction, the hydrogen crystallizes, and then you're at absolute zero, and yeah, stuff gets really weird when you get to 0K. Like the universe divides by 0. No, and then yeah, it's really easy to heat it up. Today's cursed rocket, a little less cursed this time. Let me see. Vulcan with an EUS on top. I like it. I like it, Zay. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool, actually. It's a pretty good little rocket. You wouldn't want this to be mistorqued. That's just non-conformance and a reporting problem. If the part is nominal and installed per spec, and it was due to thermal pressure cycles, that would mean their analysis is off, which is very no bueno. Yeah, Novus, that's what I'm thinking. I don't think they would have gotten the analysis wrong at this point. It sounds like somebody just over-torqued those bolts and pinched the gasket. That is, yeah, no, that happens all the time. Dude, that happens with cars all the time. People over-torque it. Yeah, exactly, Derzies. I'm pretty sure. Honest question. Can't they access the bolts while it's on the pad and fix the issue on the pad? Well, they're rolling it back to the pad anyway, Swishio. They had to roll back because of the check valve. That's, dude, the other thing is I would be very, 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 very curious as to how a valve got stuck because something that wasn't propellants was inside of the pipe. Yeah, that would bother me more than over-torquing some bolts for a gasket, to be honest with you. Due to vibration temperature changes and other factors such as a spiral wound gasket stress relaxation, the bolt tension will gradually decrease, resulting in a loss of torque causing a leak. Where'd you find that on Wikipedia, Spaceman? Because, yeah, that sounds like what Rocket Guy said. I mean, Rocket Guy, I don't mean to be like, yeah, no, I know about this because it's a car. I know the tolerances are different. But, yeah, that sounds like what Rocket Guy said. Either way, I think somebody just didn't torque it right. I'd be interested to see who torqued it when and if they documented it. Not to suggest any nefarious purpose. Could have been at the end of the guy's shift and he's just like, okay, that's good, you know. But then again, okay, that's good, you know, is not something you do with rockets. That is in fact a really bad thing to do. You want to be absolutely sure. You want to be absolutely 100% sure. And that therein right there, that's why spacecraft take time to make, because you have to be absolutely sure. You have to get your engineering to the point where you're absolutely sure. And even when you're absolutely sure, you can still launch it and it still goes wrong. That's why it's like Tetris, man. You never win. You just get better. You never freaking win. Do you have any more of that small engine? Which one, Sevi? Yeah, I would be wondering where that rubber piece came from. I work in a shop and I see people not torquing fasteners to spec all the time and see issues all the time as a result. Yeah, Derzies. Yeah. It's almost like the engineers engineered that bolt to stretch to a certain tolerance so they can pinch at the right torque, right? And yeah, you know, people using grade 5 or grade 8 should be... Dude, trust me, yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a pain in the butt. You just write, I work on rockets and that's the name of the game. See, Luminari, that's why I listen to these press conferences. And now what we're going to do, we're going to really... See, I'm not an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I just play one here on Twitch, like Doogie Howser of Rocket Science, okay? NPH wouldn't do that. No. So what I like to do is I like to try to answer the press's questions, and then I have chat gauge if I'm right or not. You can't... With this stuff, dude, that's one thing that I've learned, Lumi. You can't screw around with that. You cannot screw around with that. You have to be sure. And not only do you have to be sure, but what you did physically on the rocket has to match your analysis. That's way more important. If your math says 1 and you go with the hardware and you get an output number of 0, something is wrong there. That means your analysis wasn't good, or you did something wrong between hardware and analysis, which is bad. That's Novus said that. He's right. It's a huge no-no. All right, transcript of what he said. What we determined is that the compression on the gasket between the flanges were relaxing, which alleviated some of the torque and loosened up the bolts, and that's likely the cause. So, you think it's just thermal cycles, Rocket Guy? You think it's that simple? I mean, I'm actually asking. My opinion went out the window because of what Spaceman said, so I will defer to your judgment, man. You have way more experience than me in this than I do. Hey, Alleviate, 22 months. Looking forward to seeing KSP today. What are you thinking of building? I want to keep working on the MLV. Do we know what was the foreign object in the valve? No, that's a whole separate thing, Swish. That could be anything. That could be anything. If a piece of rubber got caught in the valve and prevented it from closing, that's no good. You got to figure out where that piece of rubber came from. That also could be from a relaxed gasket, or a gasket that froze, or somebody just left a piece of rubber in the line. The only thing you want in those commodity lines, helium, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, The only thing you want in those lines are those. You do not want oxygen in the helium line. You can have helium in the hydrogen line, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, really, because of anti-geysering. So, basically, you don't want anything that you didn't intend to be in there. That's called foreign object debris. That's absolutely a real thing. It's FOD. So, a piece of FOD got in there, and somebody could have left it in there. It could have came off. It could have chipped off a piece when they were flowing propellants. Maybe they flew propellants too fast. I don't know. Because flow rate of hydrogen propellant especially is very, very important. If you don't get the flow rate right, your pipe will pressurize because of all the gas that you generated because you flowed too fast. That's why they purged the pipes with helium before, which is why I said, like, oh, you can have helium in your hydrogen line and you can have helium in your oxygen line. That's a thing. You can do that. Not you can do that. That's what they do. If you're not sure, you send in a call back to quality or engineering to verify the process. If it's wrong, they'll make some adjustments and then you work on it. You work on conventional prompt strike. If you ever double guess engineering, we bring it back and then we bring it back to them before you touch it. Yeah, you have to be sure. There's no, it might work. The last time they did that, they launched a space shuttle and it freaking exploded. Don't do that. That is not a good idea. Trust me on that one. You say, send it. Don't do that with rockets. Bad. Nope, don't do that. I don't know if it has to be thermal, but what would cause the gasket to relax other than thermal or moisture or something like that? Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's the other thing, not being torqued to spec. But that would mean that somebody signed off on that checkout process, right? And said that was okay when it wasn't. Either that or the analysis is wrong, like what Nova said. It could be any one of those things. And this is why this takes time. Because you have to figure out which one it is. And you have to go back and do what's called a fault tree analysis. You have to figure this out. It is very, very important. And you can't just be like, I'm not really sure why that happened. It's fine. It's acceptable risk. No, that's how people get killed. Yeah, let's not do that. Whatever quality signed off on that is screwed. If that's the problem, right? Yeah, you got to figure it out. Maybe more info will come from the questions. All right, so let's see how good your boy is at this. What did I do last time? I think I got about
the core stage intertank umbilical.
I think I got about half of them right.
Also,
please stick.
That was our target.
Okay, here we go.
And with that, I'll pass it back to Catherine.
Thank you, Cliff. I will now begin the question.
They do have filters, Keen.
Please stick to one question and identify to whom it is directed. If we have time, we'll allow reporters to ask a second question. Again, you can enter *1 on your phone to be entered into the queue at any time, and you can enter *2 if you'd like to be removed from.
Swishio, ULA has never had a RUD. What are you referring to? Hey, Hypersonic. Last time you got about half of them right. All right, here we go. EJ answers press questions about Artemis. Let's see how good I understand this.
Our first question will be from Marcia Dunn of the Associated Press.
Yes, hello. I'm wondering, what are the launch windows in August, and will it take pretty much a really clean wet dress rehearsal to be able to meet August? Thanks.
Okay. What are the windows for August? If I remember looking at those charts right, it's late August. It should be the 3rd or 4th week of August, but I could be wrong on that one. I haven't looked at the charts lately. And is it a tight schedule for the wet dress rehearsal? Late August? What is it now? It's May? Wet dress rehearsal in June? July for checkouts? It's close, but that should be okay. That should be enough time. Even if you have to do a wet dress a couple of times, I still think that's enough time. All right, so I think it's the 3rd week of August. I could be wrong. So that would be 21st through the 27th. Well, if that counts. It's right here, I think. No static fire on the SRBs. They did that a couple years ago, Swishio, out in Utah. Yeah, I mean, Rocket, it should be enough time, but yeah, once again, it always depends. You're absolutely right. It depends because you don't know how long it's going to take for them to be absolutely sure, right? Like, all right, anyway, let's see if I'm right. You guys be the judge.
Yeah, I think, Marcia, first
hypersonic.
let me answer the second half of your question. We have very clear objectives that we need to work through for the wet dress. We worked through a number of those. I think Charlie has indicated some of that in the past of what we've been able to do. We need to get the vehicle tanked and get to a replenish mode. So from my perspective, when we get through that, then we'll be ready to say, yeah, you know, wet dress is complete. As far as windows, we do have our launch period 24 is the early part of August. We do have to make sure we work with the range on any of these, by the way, and particularly one of those is the Psyche mission in there, which has a pretty clear launch window. And then launch period 25 begins towards the end on August 23rd. So.
Partial credit? Partial credit? Partial credit? Partial credit? Partial credit. That counts. That counts. All right. 0.5 out of 1. 0.5. 0.5 out of 1. All right, that's good. We're at 50%. That's passing, right? Nope. Nope.
Those are the two in August. 24 starts in July, but those are the early August and late August timeframes for launch period 24 and 25.
So, all right, little thing on launch windows here, guys. So Florida is 28, or Kennedy, 28 degrees north latitude. All right, that has a lot to do with this. Okay, the moon is 6 degrees inclined relative to the equator. So, if you launch due east out of Kennedy, you're going to get into a 28 degree inclined orbit, meaning your orbital tilt relative to the equator is going to be about 28 degrees. The moon is 6 degrees inclined to Earth's equator. Okay? You have a 22 degree inclination difference now. And you have to go around the Van Allen belt. So you might need to go into a higher inclined orbit like they did from the Apollo program. A lot of people ask me, well, how did they get through the radiation belt? Well, it's called the radiation belt for a reason. It's not the radiation sphere. They went around it, straight up. So that requires an inclined orbit, but you still have a huge inclination change to make up for there. So, long story short, because of that, right, because of that exact problem, the moon is only in the right spot every basically 3 weeks. It's about 3 weeks. It sometimes varies because it's not perfect. The moon's orbit isn't perfectly circular. You know, Earth is freaking 22 degree axial tilt and it's weeble wobbling around like a big ball of jello. So there are some perturbing forces here and there. So it varies, you know. It's like how our calendar isn't perfect. Our calendar takes into account the imperfections and orbital mechanics between celestial bodies, basically how the planets move. That's why February every once in a while just has a different amount of days. In case of the bolts losing, I know in case of the big engines like 30,000, where they don't actually fasten the head bolts with a wrench, they use a hydraulic piston to pull on the bolt to stretch it enough to make the nut. Interesting. Yeah, maybe, Shy, maybe. He didn't really say as to why. He just said the bolts backed out. But yeah, maybe we'll get, Rocket Guy's right. Maybe we'll get one in a question. So I got half credit there. I didn't get the wet dress rehearsal part right. I said they should have enough time. But I mean, I don't know. He said that the objectives were clear. So I mean, they basically have two. Like if I'm doing the math out right in my head, they have about 2 weeks of leeway here. Weeble wobbles. Yep. Oh, technical term. Absolutely. Ask Luminari. Weeble wobbling is a technical term. Yep. Oh yeah. It's not. Lumi, you don't need to back me up. It's all good. You can say it's not a technical term, but it is in my mind. All right. So I'd say half credit there. So we're 0.5 for 1. Question: would the umbilical have been torqued after the VAB release testing? I mean, yeah, I suppose, yeah. They did test all the umbilicals, Rocket Guy, right? Yeah. But why wouldn't they torque it back to spec, you know? But then again, maybe something wore when they threw that TSMU back, you know? Who knows?
Our next question is from Bill Harwood of CBS News.
Bill's good. I like Bill. He's a good
Yeah, thank
reporter.
you very much, Bill Harwood. For Jim, I'm curious when you think the export control issue will be resolved. I mean, you know, you've had an SLS countdown in one form or another for many, many months, if not years. And so I think it's a little hard for some of us to understand why we can't get more details at this point, or why PAO isn't allowed to provide real-time coverage from the firing room given the time that's passed. I mean, just as a point of reference, you know, NASA used to hand out shuttle countdown bar charts before each flight, and it's pretty hard to understand why one was okay and this one isn't, especially given it's the same engines and essentially the same cryo system. So I'm just curious when this might get resolved, because it's hard for us to understand. Thanks.
I actually don't know the answer to this question, to be honest with you. I have no idea. I'll just take the L on this one, and I'm going to actually listen. Yeah, I don't know. That's a question that I have. So, we didn't have any stream of them doing the wet dress rehearsal. We just had a camera sitting out on the pad looking at the rocket, and every once in a while it puffed out some smoke. NASA usually will be very transparent about things. They'll, as like Bill was saying, like during the shuttle program, dude, you could go look up any system on the space shuttle right now. Like, you can look up how it works, how it was built, where it was made. Like, you can look up all that stuff. It's all public domain because it's a NASA rocket. Within reason. There's certain things that you obviously can't find. But, like the entire shuttle operations manual, it's 1,100 pages. It's available for download right off of NASA's site. You could learn how to fly a space shuttle if you really want to. So, I actually don't know the answer to this question. Looks like they filed that whole thing. Yeah, interesting. All right, so I'm interested for this answer, but I'm just gonna take the L on this one. Well, that is just an export control issue. You have to work all over again for a new vehicle and new agencies doing the policy checking. Yeah. All right. I'll take the L on this one. I'm 0.5 for 2 because I don't know the answer.
Thanks, Bill, and I probably should move a little further away from Catherine before I answer this question. Certainly, we've heard your and others' concerns about the launch count and what we can share. I can tell you that for wet dress, we're actually using those as our test case as to how the team uses the loops. I think you remember from shuttle, the launch director loop and the NASA test director loop, and then we had anomaly loops that never made their way out for shuttle. So we're trying to use wet dress to say, first of all, we need to get further into the count than we've been able to get thus far to understand everything that comes across the loops. We're having our PAO folks participate in the wet dress. We're recording those so we can kind of go back and say, what can we really make available for launch? We're looking at historical launches, shuttle, other government launches as to what's out there. And we're looking at what can we have from a commentary perspective over the parts where the export control folks are worried about what might be shared. So I can tell you that as recent as, I can't remember now, the rigs run together yesterday or today, I shared a couple links to some launch commentary with folks so we can really understand what we can and can't share, and we'll work closely with the export control folks. But I certainly understand your concern and the history there, Bill, and want to tell you that we're working to give the best coverage we can when it comes time for launch.
Thank you. Our next question.
Yeah, that tells me that SLS has something on it that the shuttle didn't have. And what that system is, no idea. I have no clue. That tells me if they're worried about, disseminating certain bits of information and they're worried about export controls, that tells me that SLS has something on it that is classified somewhere that the shuttle did not have. And I don't know what that is, to be honest, guys. I have no freaking clue. Policy changes a lot, and it's been a long time since the shuttle. True that. The only possibility would be nuclear propulsion. Well, yeah, Creeper, you heard what Genesis said earlier in the stream. You were there for that. Export has been much more prominent now as well due to commercial influence. Yeah. Interesting. So doesn't that mean they have anything on it that is classified, so to speak? So it doesn't mean that they... Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, Rocket Guy, you're right. It's just very interesting me to, like, say that something that's out in the public domain already because of the shuttle would be classified this time around. I mean, but then again, there's no universal rule set for export control now, is there? Ditto to I2. There's actually been updates to control guidelines as recently as late last year. I2's a freaking nightmare now. I'm gonna be real with you. I know the reason. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it, but I know the reason, and I'm sure the people that are in the know, you know the reason. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I'll take the L on that one.
Question is from Philip Sloss of NASA Space Flight.
Okay, so this is coming from Phil. Phil over at NSF really knows his stuff. They actually have made shuttle information harder to find. Phil Sloss was talking about it on the Off Nominal podcast, yeah. That's also outside of NASA controls. They have to abide by the guidelines as they're written. Yep. Yeah, interesting, Lamy. That's, yeah, okay. Huh. Yeah, well, kind of sucks, but... Tell us, you should be able to extrapolate the answer more or less from me doing this. There you go. Next question.
Thanks. I think this is for Cliff. I believe that I'd heard that there were gaskets on either side of the debris plate on that flange connection. This is regarding the hydrogen leak. Was it one of those gaskets or both of them? And was this flange connection serviced or rechecked after the umbilical retract release test back in September? Thanks.
He asked it too, Rocket Guy. Yeah. Can I want to listen to it one more time.
Right.
Thanks. I think this is for Cliff. I believe that I'd heard that there were gaskets on either side of the debris plate on that flange connection. This is regarding the hydrogen leak. Was it one of those gaskets or both of them? And was this flange connection serviced or rechecked after the umbilical retract release test back in September? Thanks.
Okay, so when SLS was fully stacked a couple months ago, they tested all of the umbilicals. They separated all the umbilicals in the same way that they would separate them on the pad. Phil's asking if they were if the umbilical was assembled. So they connected the umbilical, and then they shot it off and they tested it. They tested it throwing back, right? And then they reconnected it again. He's asking if the first time that they connected and the second time they connected it was at the same time. And then the first part of that question was, well, I actually don't know the answer to that first part of the question. He said it's a double gasket, so... Interesting. Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to either of these questions because it's more of a technical thing. And honestly, fellas, the questions that I don't know the answer to are good questions. That's how you know they're good questions, because that is that's trying to get us new information that otherwise wouldn't be known. Phil always asks a good question, so I don't know. I think the last two questions we should kind of abstain from because there's no way I would have been able to answer them. Yeah, let's see, Rocket Guy.
Thanks, Phil. So yes, there are two gaskets. They're called fluorogreen gaskets. I believe that's the manufacturer's name for those gaskets.
Of course you knew that.
And yes, they were torqued prior to the umbilical release and retract test. Unfortunately, however, they were not re-torqued prior to rolling out for WDR. So it's a good lesson learned for us. Our engineering community has been really working this very hard. and basically has determined that any cryo flows from now on, we will basically be getting back in there and retorquing these bolts each time. So you are correct in saying that they were not retorqued after URRT, but again, lesson learned, and the community is going to school in that, and we do plan to retorque after each cryo flow.
Thank you. Our next question is,
Why would they change the torque spec after the umbilical test? Honest question. Did I miss that? What do you mean they didn't change it? They didn't change it, they just didn't check. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Not changing the spec, just the processing flow. Okay, so that was a kink in the processing flow that they had to iron out, right? Like, am I understanding that right now? Interesting. Yeah, lesson learned is to now to check the torque after every cryo flow. Yeah, okay. Novus, Rocket, would I be right in assuming here that this is something that they probably would have, that having the shuttle personnel here, i.e., I know I always say it, no constellation cancellation and bringing all your technical expertise over? Am I right in assuming that this could could mitigate that problem? Not in this particular instance, but these processing problems would be something that somebody that puts shuttle stacks together for 30 years would know. They would understand that behavior. Am I right in assuming that? Yeah, Novus, for sure. Absolutely. Wouldn't have hurt Shirley, but then again, it's a new system. Yeah. Is there a possibility that Artemis will be canceled? No. No, not a chance, KSP. Huh. Are there issues from doing many tests? Later rockets are okay if they just roll out and launch. Wet dress rehearsal is about finding stupid little problems like this and making sure you get your checklist and your what's called processing flow correct. Because, okay, here's the thing, physics doesn't freaking change. If you do your wet dress rehearsal, you roll the rocket back, right? And everything was right for that wet dress rehearsal. And then you roll the thing back, and then you go to launch, you do the exact same thing that you did when you rolled it out from the wet dress rehearsal. You literally the exact same thing, every bolt gets torqued down, every process is exactly the same as the wet dress rehearsal, it'll launch and it'll work. Physics doesn't change like that, okay? If you did everything here and you got to the wet dress rehearsal, and you did the whole wet dress rehearsal right, and you rolled back and you safe the engines, and then you literally just pick up the same processing flow again, do the exact same thing, it'll be right. It will work. Every time. As long as you made sure you crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. That's what torquing these stupid bolts is about. They don't have the exact checklist for this. They don't have the exact checklist, for SLS made. You don't know how to put the rocket together until you go to put it together. And there's no way to simulate that.
POV, you're the guy who didn't tighten the screw hard enough, and now you have to watch a national press conference about what an idiot you are.
There you go. Has the umbilical design changed from the shuttle? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It would help, but I'm not sure if it's a surefire solution. It's a different beast with different requirements. Even though it's the same hardware, it could be used in different ways. Yeah, and Brimo's right. She understands. Interesting. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, that's right. That processing flow stuff is nothing we didn't learn. And then, if you get it right for Artemis 1, then for Artemis 2, just follow the same checklist. Literally the exact same thing. Just do the exact same thing that you did last time. Just follow the checklist that you already wrote. It's already there. Follow the checklist to a T. You move that rocket out, it'll launch the exact same way. Physics doesn't change. It doesn't change like that. As long as the rocket from manufacturing all the way to launch was done in the exact same way, albeit a couple of things here and there, and as long as it matches the analysis, then you're right. Then yeah, it'll do the same thing every time. You won't need to worry about that. Falcon 9 is a very good example of this. Just do the same thing every time. You do the same thing every time, the rocket will work. Simple as that. You start changing things, that's when things gets a little weird. Like trying to land your first stage, right? That's why SpaceX didn't get it right the first couple of times. And then they froze the design, and now Falcon 9, knock on wood, lands every time. If you do the same thing every time, the same result is going to happen. The thing is, you have a vehicle with 1,000 or 1,000,000 freaking moving parts. It's tough to make sure every one of those parts does the same thing every time. And that is the human side of things. You just have to make sure that you have good project management, et cetera, and that everything gets documented, and you have people constantly updating into checklists and make sure that everybody's on the same page. That's a people side of things. That's not the engineering side of things so much. Predominant forklift, 40 months. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. 40 months is a long time, dude. It's almost 4 years. Infrequency of flights is why they're not reusing the SRBs this time around, Blinga. Yeah, infrequency of flight. The shuttle was designed, KSB, the shuttle was designed to fly like twice every month, right? And how long do you think it takes to manufacture an SRB casing? If it costs like, say it costs like, I don't know, $1 million to make one of the casings, $1 million bucks. And it takes 2 months to manufacture one of those things. If you're launching a lot, even though it's expensive to go fish it out of the ocean, because you're launching the shuttle a lot, you just need more casings in general. So think of casings, right? Think of casings and SRBs with the shuttle program like fairings with Falcon 9. It's the same idea. Are fairings expensive to make? No, they are not expensive to make. Fairings are about $5 million a pop per $5 million per side per what Elon was saying, right? Falcon 9, $60 million. That's a very, very small amount. What is that, like 5%? 5% of the vehicle's cost? That's nothing. Why would you bother reusing fairings? And that's the mentality that most people have, every other rocket launch provider. The reason why SpaceX reuses their fairings is because of the high frequency of flight. Fairings may not cost a lot, but they take a long time to make. It's a production bottleneck. That's why they fish those fairings out. That's why SpaceX has that entire fleet of ships to go and fish fairings out. Bob and Doug, that's what they're designed to do. And then there's Shannon and Megan that are designed to go get Dragon capsules too, right? That's why SpaceX has a freaking small navy to go and 2 of them are designed to go get fairings. The reason is because they're a production bottleneck. You won't be able to launch as much. That it only makes sense if you employ it in scale. Fishing those SRBs out, same idea. The SRBs do take some time to make because the propellant, the grain, has to cure inside of the casing. Takes a little bit of time to repack it. And if you don't have enough casings to support, well, you're going to need 16 casings. If you're launching the shuttle every 2 times a month, right? You launch the shuttle 2 times a month, there's 4 segment SRBs on both sides, so that's 8 casings per launch. So you need 16 casings per month. That's a lot of casings. So it makes sense to reuse it because the shuttle was supposed to be employed in scale. So SLS, right now, it's going to launch once a month, and that makes no sense to go and fish it out because you can manufacture, because the time between launches is 6 months instead of like 6 weeks. You know what I mean? Or, well, not 6 weeks, 2 weeks. 6 months compared to 2 weeks. That's why they're not getting them back. It's kind of dumb, but I mean, it's what I always say. Even with an expendable rocket, guys, scale is what matters. Scale is what matters, and that's what I like about SpaceX. They understand that scale is the problem and not reusability necessarily. Even though SpaceX is trying to tackle reusability and scale at the same time. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. An NRC quest was repurposed from Dragon 1 to fairing recovery duties. There you go. Thanks for putting up with me for almost 4 years. My pleasure. Not really, but all right. Nah, it's all good, man. Rock guy, we'll never know. But like, had there been a steely-eyed missile man on the ground crew, I could totally see the guy being like, "Oh yeah, that's because of the cryo flow. We need to retorque," and everyone in the room is just like, "Wait, do what now?" Yeah, Rock guy, I'm with you exactly. After this wet dress rehearsal for SLS, how many more times can they fill her up? It's fine, Blinga. You can tank and detank the SLS core because it's way stronger than an external tank. You can tank it way more times than the ET. I wouldn't worry about it. Also, with the SRBs, you got to chill your O-rings down too soon. Nah, yeah, too soon. All right. Next question.
From Eric Berger of Ars Technica.
Oh boy. Hi, thanks for doing this.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for the update on this. Question for Jim Free. This week, the administrator said cost-plus contracts were, and I quote, a plague on NASA. Obviously, you can't change the contracts already led for SLS and Orion, and I think the ground systems as well, the mobile launch tower. But can you talk a little bit about whether future exploration systems contracts are going to be awarded in fixed price, given sort of this change in attitude? Thanks.
It's not a change in attitude. Oh boy, wow, that guy just really likes to hear what he wants to hear. Bill was talking about cost-plus contracting in terms of commercially farmed contracts. You wouldn't, if you're having competition, firm fixed price makes more sense. I will still contend to say that cost-plus for a development contract makes way more sense. Firm fixed price is what you do after development. Cost-plus contracting is not bad, but what Bill was saying is that after the lunar landers are developed, they're going to transfer over to firm fixed price for lunar landers, which makes sense. You don't do a cost-plus contract if you're bulk buying a bunch of landers. That doesn't make any sense. Firm fixed price works in commercial crews' favor for operational missions. However, firm fixed pricing for development of the systems in commercial crew has actually worked against Starliner, believe it or not. And you could say whatever the frick you want. Oh, Boeing's more expensive, EJ. Boeing's more expensive. They don't need more money. How the frick would you know? Do you know everything about that capsule? No way. You don't know how much it took to develop that thing. I contend to say that fixed pricing is what delayed Starliner to begin with, because Boeing may have underbid. And that kind of sucks on their part, but that's why cost plus makes sense. Because you might not know how much something costs. You don't know how much a spacecraft is going to be, especially a clean sheet design, a brand new spacecraft. You don't know how much that's going to cost until you actually put one together and fly it. That's when you get your cost projections. I'm having a good day, and said, yeah, everything's good. So, I think this will be a skirted answer. Obvious to just refer to fixed price contracts NASA uses right now. Are the suits fixed price, for instance? Yeah, exactly. You see, that's what I mean. Eric, for whatever reason, thinks Bill said something about how cost plus is bad and how firm fixed pricing is better. And because I'm worried about my taxpayer dollars, every NASA contract should be firm fixed price. Well, firm fixed price can lead to underperformance. I'll give you underfunding it. If you weren't sure about how much it was going to cost and it being awarded a firm fixed price, like I said, Boeing got awarded a firm fixed price, and then they screwed up because they didn't have all their T's crossed and all their I's dotted. Why? Because they probably needed more money to do it, and then they had a software problem because they tried to engineer a capsule. They tried to engineer Starliner for a fixed amount of money, and it turns out that it may have cost more than what they originally anticipated. And that probably caused them to skimp on things, which probably is the reason why OFT-1 fricked up as much as it did. Now, with an entity like SpaceX, that firm fixed price looks pretty good because SpaceX gives a frick about what they do. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Boeing doesn't. Elon runs a pretty tight ship over there, despite what anybody might say. He runs a very tight ship over there. And that's from people that work there that have told me this. So, SpaceX also has a lot of momentum behind it with investing. And, don't get me wrong, Boeing does too, but SpaceX already had a capsule. Remember that. SpaceX had a head start because they had the Dragon 1 capsule, and Dragon 2 is derived from Dragon 1, which is why their bid was so much lower than Boeing. Boeing had nothing. When's the last time Boeing made a capsule? Oh yeah, never. Interesting. See what I mean? Firm fixed price is probably the reason why Starliner is being delayed, but I can't prove that. I can't prove that for sure. I have no concrete evidence, because the truth of the matter is that we won't know until this is all done, till this is all said and done. But I think, Rocky, I think you're right. I think he's going to skirt the answer, because honestly, SLS is an in-house project, and the lander is not an in-house project. So let's see what he says. Starship is definitely on cost plus, guys. Look at how many times they've redesigned Starship. Starship, if it was a NASA program, would make way more sense cost plus, because you don't know what you're going to need to make Starship work. How can you predict that? How can you predict every bolt down to the torque spec, right? There's no way. It's impossible. You can't do that.
Sure. Thanks, Eric.
Let's see what he says.
When we look at our acquisition process, we really try and balance the risk of what we're trying to buy and its maturity versus what acquisition strategies contract types are available to us, and make the best choice. I think you've seen what we've tried to do with landers. Obviously, there's a lot of history with fixed price in other parts of human spaceflight. And then when we pick it, it's our job as NASA to manage our contractors, regardless of the type that we have, and in some cases manage ourselves too. Right, in fixed price contracts, we can't be coming in with all kinds of changes, because that drives up costs. And then it's our expectation that our contractors, with our management, our contractors perform to it. So I think we have some recent examples where we've for high dollar value and critical systems like landers, like spacesuits, where we've actually used fixed price. Does that mean we'll never use cost plus again? No, it doesn't. Let's go back and look at what we're buying and make the best choice that minimizes the risk to the government.
Thank you.
So, I said that it depends on what you're doing, and that's kind of what he said. He said it. Jim probably said it better than me. I don't know. Should EJ get partial credit here, or no, or that's not exactly what he said? What do you think? Neuro, I'm pretty sure that's what happened now that I'm thinking about it. Firm fixed pricing for development makes no sense. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Rocket Guy, what would you say? Sounds like that was full? Okay, so question 1 we got half right. 2 and 3, that was a design question, so I couldn't answer that. 4, I got right. So what are we? We're 1.5 out of 2 right now because I abstained from the other questions. If we're going the full thing, I mean, Phil's question I wouldn't have been able to answer, and neither Stephen Clark's question I wouldn't have been able to answer either. The only way I would be able to answer that is if I worked for NASA, I mean, yeah, it matters. That's the thing. You have to figure out the way that's going to minimize the most amount of risk. Jim said it better than me. Like, if you go into cost plus for a block buy, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You should have that all figured out by the time you order a bunch of a rocket. You're telling me there's uncertainties when you're buying 20 of certain type of rocket? That reeks of corruption right there. But for development contracts, not so much. Okay, full credit, so I'm 1.5 out of 2 thus far. If we're looking at the whole scope of the thing, including questions that I couldn't answer, I'm 1.5 out of 4. I'll take that, considering it was impossible to answer.
Our next question is from Emery Kelly of Florida Today.
Let's see what else we got.
Hey, folks. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think this might be a question for Cliff. I'm just trying to get a little bit more of a mental visualization, I guess, of what's going on at Air Liquide. Are they a little bit? I mean, they're also supplying and helping out with other launches? Are they a little bit overwhelmed? I mean, where does this kind of stand on their priority list? I would assume it's at the top, if not toward the top. But I'm just trying to get a little bit more on what they're working over at that plant. Thanks.
Yeah. So Air Liquide had a flow problem. The SLS requires a great deal more of nitrogen gas than other rockets of this class. So like Saturn V, the shuttle, basically. It requires more nitrogen than the shuttle. Why? Literally, it's bigger. It's bigger. It is physically bigger. It needs more nitrogen. Just like it needs more oxygen. Just like it needs more hydrogen. It'll need more helium too. Now, I'm not exactly... I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the pipes. What I think happened is that Air Liquide flowed... They couldn't manage the flow rate. You have to move nitrogen at a certain quantity of liquid per minute. Because if you flow nitrogen too slow, it'll turn to gas. You flow it too fast, it'll freeze the pipe. And then you'll get a frozen pipe. Anybody live in the winter? You know what a frozen pipe does, right? I think the things that Air Liquide needed to fix is because they tried to flow way too fast through the pipe, and they froze a pipe and it broke. I'm pretty damn sure. Boeing moving their headquarters to Washington, D.C., then they are going for full government welfare. Business not doing good. Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. Don't think that the company wouldn't have any production problems, though. Wasn't that the question? Like them being able to keep up with demand or whatever? Let's listen to it again. They said they flew too fast through a condenser. They flowed the nitrogen too fast through a condenser and it froze up and broke it. They said that in another press conference. But here, I'll listen to the question again.
The risk to the government.
Thank you. Our next question
for Cliff. I'm just trying to get a little bit more of a mental visualization, I guess, of what's going on at Air Liquide. Are they a little bit? I mean, they're also supplying and helping out with other launches. Are they a little bit overwhelmed? I mean, where does this kind of stand on their priority list? I would assume it's at the top, if not toward the top. But I'm just trying to get a little bit more on what they're working over at that plant. Thanks.
I mean, Rocket Guy, I think the demand is higher, yeah? The demand is most likely higher, but if I'm recalling correctly, it was a flow rate problem. That's what Kathy Leder said in a press interview, a post-wet dress rehearsal press interview. I'm pretty sure Kathy said that. I'm not... Air Liquide. Air Liquide is a third-party provider of nitrogen for rockets on the Cape. Yeah, it's a nitrogen plant. They take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and they freeze it and they turn it into a liquid and then they can send it to the rockets that need it. If I'm remembering correctly, Air Liquide has a distribution system that literally goes to every pad. Yeah, it's actually kind of cool. Yeah, I just think the guy is asking if that problem arose because the company is stressed. Yeah, Air Liquide is what they're called, Rem, yeah. Yeah, you might be right, Rocket Guy. We'll see. We'll see. I have my answer. Let's see what happens. See, I think you're probably right, to be honest with you. But let's see.
Yeah, and Emery, what I'd say is, there's been our system, the SLS has a larger demand than because of the size of the vehicle. So there's been workarounds as Air Liquide has taken their system down to continue to provide nitrogen for the whole center. And I would say this is at the top of their priority list. I think somebody said after the last one, they've never done anything that has affected a launch going all the way back through Apollo. So I'm sure there's no group that feels more responsible for this than them and the folks at Kennedy that work with them. So I think it's high at their priority list. There's been nitrogen supplied for the ongoing operations and launches there that will continue to go on. These changes really help us with the large amount that we need for SLS.
What do you think? Chad, it's up to you. I mean, what do you think? I don't know. Do you think, Bill? All right, cool. Yeah, Rocky Guy, I honestly, I remember them saying that in a press interview, dude. That I had the answer to that question. It was already said. They didn't get the flow rate right. If you flow nitrogen too fast, you get a gas pipe, and then you if it pressurizes, it'll force the liquid where you don't want it to go. You get backflow in the pipe, or it'll force it forward, and you get a geysering effect. Right? I've been reading all about this since the wet dress rehearsal. If you flow too fast, you freeze the pipe and the nitrogen freezes inside of it, and now you have a slug of nitrogen in there. And the pipe usually breaks. Pipe burst. Like I said, anybody that lives where it's cold, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Water freezes in the pipe, you turn the faucet on, and then your pipe bursts, and then you get a swimming pool in your basement. Great. Right, but the question was about Air Liquide and them being able to supply the Cape and SLS with its massive needs, no? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Yeah, I think there's no... Okay, so like, I guess modify my answer a little bit. I think that they can supply the Cape just fine, and that's what Jim said, or Cliff said that. Cliff said that they could supply the Cape just fine. They've been supplying the Cape since the Apollo program. It's just with this particular scenario with SLS, it broke. They didn't get the flow rate right. I think that's what he said. Like, I don't know. And now, like, Rod Guy, what do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? I think I'm right about the nitrogen flow thing, but is that the answer to the question, or? I don't know. Honestly, no idea. I think it's not a problem for Air Liquide to be 100%. I think it's because it's the first time they gave nitrogen to SLS. They needed to flow a much higher quantity, and I think it's isolated to them. I honestly think they're able to keep up with demand just fine. I think they just didn't get the flow rates right because, I mean, Rocket Guy, once again, how the hell do you know how do you know what the right flow rate is for a rocket that big? They only have the shuttle. They only have the shuttle as for that much nitrogen that's needed ground side, right? Like, you only have the shuttle as reference. And then maybe Saturn V if they've been around that long. I mean, Jim said that they've been there since Apollo. I think demand is not an issue. And I probably should have said that first. Demand isn't an issue. This is an SLS isolated problem because of the high quantity of nitrogen that they need. That probably would have been the better way to answer it. You'd give it? All right. Okay, 2.5 out of 3. I'm doing pretty good today.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jeff Faust of Space News.
All right, what's Jeff say?
Cliff, I just want some clarity on the check valve. The piece of rubber, that's not from the valve itself. It's from some external source, or is that debris something wrong with the valve itself that came loose?
I actually don't know the answer to this question. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question at all. I think this is an abstainer question because this is something that I would want to know as well. You think it should not be from the valve based off of what we know? I agree. Rocket Guy, I'm with you on that one. This definitely came from downstream, or upstream, I should say. It definitely came upstream. Because if the rubber went into the valve and jammed the valve open, which is what they said it didn't come from the valve. Because they said it flowed into the valve and jammed it. That's what they said at the beginning. So I agree. It definitely came from upstream. It's debris. Now, they'll probably talk, Jim and Cliff here and Kathy will probably talk about understanding where that came from. That is the most important part. If it didn't come from the valve, where did it come from? And not only where did it come from, when did that get like that? What step did you do What did you do in the rocket's countdown process that made that debris, if at all, and put it in that valve? If you can't figure that out, well, then it could be a foreign object debris. Somebody could have just left a piece of rubber in there, which means you have to change your processing flow during closeout because you have to figure out why that thing is in there. That's the more important part here. I'm willing to guess. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did it come from? Rubberized Joe. All right, let's see. I don't know. Should I abstain from this? No, I'll throw my hat into the ring. But I had help with Rocket Guy this time around. I recall from something, maybe this call earlier, that NASA said they first learned about it when they went for the second stage prop load during the wet dress rehearsal and then realized the possible issue where they couldn't get the tank pressure they needed. Yeah, that sounds right. Because the second wet dress rehearsal, they just wrote off the ICPS. They said, we don't need to do that. We'll tank the core stage to get the data, at least on that. That makes sense. So yeah, it came from. I'm gonna guess that it came from. So that, well, Rocket Guy, what does that leave on the table? First wet dress rehearsal, commodity flowing operations, or something from processing inside of the VAB, because it didn't get there during rollout. That's for sure. Well, actually, you know what? We don't know that for sure either. Maybe the vibrations from the crawler shook something loose and it got, it fell into the pipe. Who knows? That's once again, so my final answer for this is that I don't think that it came from the valve, and I don't think they know where it came from either. But they're going to stress the importance of understanding where it did come from. That's my final answer. Let's see if EJ got it right. The rubber could have been introduced at any time, unfortunately. They would need to see if they can match the rubber from another item. Yeah, I'd be more worried about that than the stupid hydrogen leak. At least you know what that was. Are there small rubber pieces in the tank? There's rubber all over the thing, Finn. There's O-rings, rubber seals, everywhere. There's a bajillion of them on that rocket. On every rocket. Yeah. Could be from anything. Rocket Guy's right. You got to match the rubber. You got to figure out what that thing is a part of and why and how it got there. That's the most important part. When and where when that thing got jammed, that valve, and where did it come from? That's my final answer. They're going to say something like that.
Yeah, I'll let Cliff. It's from external source, but Cliff, do you want to elaborate?
Sure, Jim. Yeah, so they're still investigating that, but there's basically what they're finding. It was found in the ground side of the quick disconnect, where you separate the vehicle from the umbilical arm. And right now, they're still investigating what could be the source of that piece of rubber. And that's all I can really say right now. They're still investigating it, looking at the designs to see if there's any possible location it could have come from. And then, they're checking when we talk about the contamination that we've seen in the check valve and all. They're trying to match up whether this was the source of the contamination particles that we see.
Points for Rocket Guy.
Thank you. Our next question is...
I would give myself half credit for that because I would say I said that they would focus on where they would really try to say where it came from, but it seems like they already figured it out. It came from a ground side umbilical. So that's something if they're saying it came from a ground side umbilical, that is part of the mobile launcher. He said it was ground side umbilical actually could be a lot of things, but he said it's where the stage connects, right? So if it's ground side of the quick disconnect, I can point to you exactly where that is. So the hydrogen ground side quick disconnect is on a piece of the launcher called the ICPSU. And I swear, I'm not making this stuff up. Like, I'm not just making up names for this. It's the interim... no, that's not right. That's not the right picture. That is a cool picture, though. So this picture was taken by my buddy Vulcan. Yeah, Derek there. Vulcan in chat. So you have a bunch of different umbilicals. So the ground side umbilicals here for the hydrogen line for the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. That's the piece with the American flag on it right there. I would like to note that only part of it is outside, quote unquote. That's the hydrogen tank right there. The oxygen tank is down here. It's actually riding inside of this conic adapter. That's called the Launch Vehicle Stage Adapter, or LVSA for short. And so, like, okay, physically here, that's the LOX line right there. See that? That big pipe. The one with the gold on it, that's the hydrogen line. The reason why I know this is not because I have some crazy insider information or anything like that. The reason why I know this is because I know that that's the hydrogen tank. Rocket fuel tanks are never pour propellants into the fuel tank. That's asking for trouble because you're going to splash propellant around all over the place. You don't do that. You fill it up from the bottom. So the bottom of the hydrogen tank, the bottom of the hydrogen tank, there's the line coming from it, and it's clearly a highly insulated line. See all the gold wrap on it? It's designed for something really freaking cold. So the hydrogen right there. There's your hydrogen line right there. And then ground side quick disconnect is that piece right there. See that? And I know this is the oxidizer line because oxidizer has a different flow rate. You can flow liquid oxygen at a much higher rate than you can flow liquid hydrogen because liquid oxygen is a liquid at a much warmer temperature than hydrogen is. Physics, basic physics. So this whole thing right here is called the ICPSU, Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage Carrier Umbilical. That's what this thing is. If it's ground side, that means it's that piece. Ground side hydrogen means right there. That's where they found it, not where it came from. Well, no, it went into the stage and it jammed a valve because it jammed a hydrogen valve. Now, what's interesting, so with hydrogen, guys, you can't, hydrogen is boiling when they move it. It's boiling. That's how in order for hydrogen to exist as a liquid, it's really freaking cold. And you have to keep it at a certain pressure, right? And the pressure that they keep it at to keep it a liquid makes it boil. It lowers the boiling point enough to where the boiling point and liquefaction kind of coincide. Yeah, I know. Physics gets weird when you freeze stuff, like really freeze stuff. Starts to get a little weird. So the propellants are boiling in here. Now, the LOX line, liquid oxygen tank, has one liquid fuel inlet, and that's it. You can vent the liquid oxygen over the side. I don't think anybody's going to get mad about venting oxygen off the side of the rocket. Hydrogen, though, you do not want to vent that overboard. One, it's a greenhouse gas. Captain Planet will come and kick you in the scrotum. Don't do that. That's bad. If you ever have your hydrogen gas, leaking, don't do that. Two, hydrogen pools. It pools everywhere you don't want it to. You don't want to introduce something explosive on the outside of the rocket. That could introduce an explosion during liftoff that's in a place where you didn't want it to be. The only explosions that should be happening when the rocket goes off is down here. So, hydrogen gets recirculated. And that's what that other pipe with the gold foil is. That pipe right there, that one right there, is for gaseous hydrogen. Gaseous hydrogen leads to a purge flame, similar to like a flame that you'd use, like a Bunsen burner, basically. A Bunsen burner, flows gas through it, and then you light the top, right? And it burning the gas causes the gas to flow through the rest of the burner. It creates a vacuum. There's a purge flame out on the pad that's actually to the right of where Derek took this picture. It's somewhere, it's over here somewhere by that light pole. And that is pulling gaseous hydrogen out of the vehicle because you don't want hydrogen gas in here, ever. That's bad. Especially when you're ground side. You're going to get gaseous hydrogen in there eventually when you go to launch, right? There's always going to be a little bit. But remember, it's about making sure that the tank stays at the right pressure. So closing this up right before you launch is usually what happens. Yeah, burning hydrogen is okay. If you combust hydrogen with oxygen oxidizer, it makes water. True story. So he's saying, go back and listen to his answer. He stated that the rubber was found there, that the check valve was on the ground side umbilical. Oh, jeez. Let me listen to it one more time.
And separate the vehicle from the umbilical arm. And right now they're still investigating what could be the source of that. Sure, Jim. Yeah, so they're still investigating that, but there's basically what they're finding. It was found in the ground side of the quick disconnect.
Okay, you're right.
Where you separate the vehicle from the umbilical arm. And right now they're still investigating what could be the source of that piece of rubber. And that's all I can really say right now. They're still investigating it, looking at the designs to see if there's any possible location it could have come from. And then, they're checking when we talk about the contamination that we've seen in the check valve and all. They're trying to match up whether this was the source of the contamination particles that we see further upstream.
Oh, that's bad. Oh man, who knows where the frick that came from. So, okay, a little bit of an addendum to it. Hibbit, thank you. There's a valve right there that's inside of that housing, and that's where they found the piece of contaminant. It jammed the valve so they couldn't close it. So when they went to fill it up with the right amount of hydrogen, they went to close that valve to seal the stage off. Yeah, it didn't work. Yeah, hydrogen basically just kept flowing when they tried to close the system off. Yeah, that's good. Oh dear. That piece of rubber could have came anywhere in the flow, anywhere. Dude, oh my god, that blows. That sucks so much. That dude, that could have came from anything. Oh no. Like the fuel lines for the ICPSU, particularly the hydrogen line, they go up here, they go down here. They go in and then they go out right there. That's where they come in right there. You could tell that they come in right here because these pipes have the gold insulation on it. And then that's not even the recirculator system. The recirculator system will go back down. They probably combine recirculation systems from the hydrogen tank on the core stage and the ICPSU, which is why there's such a big pipe right here. Oh, dude, that could have came from anywhere. That's going to suck. That's going to suck to figure that out. That's going to take some time. Yep. Thank God it was caught at the ground side umbilical. Who knows what would happen if it got past the umbilical. If that thing went into the tank, oh no, that could have been terrible. Because, okay, say they filled that thing up and that piece of rubber's in there, right? And then they go to vent the tank, and that piece of rubber gets stuck in the vent recirculation line, and it blocks it. Uh-oh. Tank overpressurization. Yeah, good thing that check valve is there. Holy crap. The check valve is basically the filter, perhaps. I mean, they have filters too, but you gotta remember, whatever you can't just have like a paper fuel filter. You flow hydrogen through a paper fuel filter, it'll disintegrate it. Ugh. Wow. Yeah, that's dude, that's a little scary. Dude, they're firing 2 Raptors at the same time at McGregor? Kick ass, man. That's pretty cool. I'll take the timeout again. I don't know, Finn. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and guess. I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is the reason why they decided to roll back. That's not good. That's really not good. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not a reflection of anybody that has to do with this project. Because technically, this is a ULA upper stage. And technically, that ICPSU is a ULA design. But I ain't blaming Tori Bruno for this. Okay? That ICPSU has been installed on that mobile launcher since 2017. And that stage has been there since 2017. That's an important thing to understand here. Letting things sit is not good for it. Especially rocket parts. Now, with that being said... Actually, if I was NASA, I'd be going to ULA. I'm going to go ahead and guess that it probably didn't come from this because there's literally 20 years of data on how these things work. You see the ICPS umbilical right here? The ICPSU. Those have been used on Slick 37B. That exact same design has been used on 37B since like 2000. If you look at a Delta 4, I'm trying to find a good picture of Delta 4 that we can see it. Yeah, there we go. That's not the best one. This is a nice high-res picture. See? Same umbilical. See it right there? Same umbilical. Very similar upper stage. So, I'd be going and asking you, hey, has that ever happened before? And if they say, oh, yes, it came from this, that might give you a clue. The miles of pipe to check. All the piping plus all the pipes in the complex. Yeah, I mean, you know, we can, like, here's the thing, fellas. You can think about this in two ways. The first way you can think about it is, oh my God, how could they get this wrong? Which is peak of Mount Stupid. They've never flown propellants through this thing before. They never flowed commodities through this entire vehicle. That's what this wet dress rehearsal test is for. It's for to catch stuff like this. Imagine if they'd gone and launched it with that piece of rubber in there. They wouldn't have been able to pressurize the ICPS. No way. They probably would have scrubbed the launch. You know, because it scrubbed the wet dress rehearsal. This is why you do these tests. You can't predict everything. It's impossible. Don't even try. The best thing that you can do is make sure that whatever you're doing is as foolproof as possible. And even then, they are still doing that. And even then, you're going to run into problems. This is why people say space is hard. Because it could be something as stupid as a little golf ball sized piece of rubber getting stuck in a check valve that scrubs the whole damn thing. That's why space is difficult. Not, oh, Apollo 13, space is hard, am I right? Don't get me wrong. Apollo 13 was pretty awesome, and it was a pretty good example as to why space is hard. But what they don't tell you is some idiot dropped that O2 tank before he installed it inside of the CSM and then didn't tell anybody about it. Turns out that dropping it can break things. Like permeate a Teflon seal so you get backflow in the O2 tank, so if you go to stir them, it explodes. This is why you figure out these problems now. Because... No, that can't be true, can it? Go look it up. Guy dropped one of the O2 tanks before he put it in the CSM. It cracked the Teflon seal. Teflon seal, well, you have to have a sensor in there. How do you know what the pressure is? So there's a wire in there. It cracked the Teflon seal and exposed the wire to the O2. A wire. Electricity. O2. Now you're going to say it's going to cause a spark and blow it up. That's not right. It heated it up. It put heat into the oxidizer and overpressurized the tank when they stirred it because they sent an electrical signal through the tank. This is why you do this, so that does not happen. This is why your processing flow, everything needs to be documented. Every freaking thing. If an idiot drops the O2 tank, throw it away. Put another one in. You don't know what that tank has done. You've introduced different scenarios into that tank. I'm pretty sure the original assembly manual for the CSM didn't call for dropping the damn thing on the ground. Throw it away. Put it over there. So it can be recertified for testing. Put another one in. They got to figure out where... So going back to SLS, they got to figure out where that damn rubber is. You got to figure out exactly where it came from, when, where, and how. If they don't, you're not launching. Don't even bother. You're increasing your probability of failure doing that. You know, there's probably a story as to why the do not hump warning exists. I don't want to know why that story exists, Winter Scythe. Also, not maintaining interfaces to where you provide insane overvoltages on the stirring sensor. Yeah, cascading failure. Oh, it's a good time, right? Side note, today in 1961, Alan Shepard becomes the first American in space on board Freedom 7. Yeah, baby. See, this is why we take the time to listen to these press conferences, and this is why I like answering the questions, because I can give examples. Not only can we answer the questions, but I can give examples as to why this process is in place. It's a very good reason, you know? Yeah, exactly. You know, that's a really good example. Why do the SRB cars say do not hump on them? Does that mean that somebody tried to do that at some point? Uh-oh, yeah, right? safety criteria and safety rules are there for a reason. Most of the time, the safety rules are there because somebody did it dumb. Yeah. The good part is that there's lots of different types of rubber, so they'll be able to narrow it down where it came from. Yeah, it's just going to take time, Blue. It's just going to take time. Yeah. Yep, don't even roll out. Yeah, Shadowman, if you're not 100% sure, if you're not as sure as you possibly can be, if there's any doubt, don't even bother. They don't let explosives get humped. Same with fuel and rail cars. Yeah, Bright Shiny. I wonder why that process is in place. I don't want to know. I don't want to know the circumstances as to why that's a thing. Because you know good and well somebody didn't say, oh, we're moving cars around with explosives. Maybe we probably shouldn't do this. That's not how humans work. Somebody probably did it and blew up an entire freight yard, and then they're like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. That's how humans work. That's a risky hump. Do not hump. I would like to think they figured out it wasn't a good idea, but yeah. I would like to think no. I would like to think they did an analysis knowing it would be transported by train, so they tested the shock it could experience and therefore made sure to eliminate the failure mode. That's probably what happened with the SRB cars, Rocket Guy. But I'll bet you, knowing the railways, it's probably they probably already knew that you shouldn't do that because of moving around other volatiles on the rails. Yeah. Yeah, railroads have that same kind of safety factor, dude. Not as much as spaceflight, but yeah, when you're controlling like 40 million pounds of freight train, you should probably be pretty sure about what you're doing, right? Like, yeah. Yeah. Yes, I know. There were power voltage problems. Yep. Yeah, that's right, W. Mm-hmm. If the rubber is found to have come from the pipes, that could be an even bigger problem because there's a chance that there was FOD in the fuel, which you then have to find. Well, there are filters in the design, Creeper. There's filters. I don't know where they are, and I don't know what they're made out of. I know there's filters in there somewhere. Because if you could figure out a filter that liquid hydrogen can flow through, first of all, good for you. I don't know what you'd make that out of. Maybe it could be just like a screen. It could be just steel. Steel will work just fine, but I mean, you got to think about the vice versa of that. You're flowing a very volatile propellant at a very low temperature through a pipe. How big is your screen? If your screen is too small, it'll freeze the screen, and then your screen goes into the check valve in pieces. Don't want that. From what I know of Third Way, you can whack it with a sledgehammer, and all you do is spread it around like Gallagher with a watermelon. Still probably not a great idea. Yeah, right. I recently applied to become a railroad engineer. They told us all of their finicky rules were all written in blood. Pretty much. But, yeah, I mean, this Chemical and Safety Hazard Investigation Board. Oh, God. But, yeah, hopefully you guys learned something from that. That's really important to understand. Anyway, next question. Let's go.
Thank you. Our next question is from Stephen Clark of Spaceflight Now.
But I thought Stephen Clark was the first one. Never mind. Doesn't matter. I said earlier that Stephen Clark...
I think we may have lost Stephen.
Stephen! Come back!
Let's see. Can we go to Irene Kloss of Aviation Week?
Thanks, Catherine. Good afternoon. I have two questions. The first for Cliff. Do you know when this debris was introduced into the helium check valve? In other words, was there a time in processing where the valve was cycled and you know that there was not debris there, and then, of course, it turned up later? And for Jim, following on Bill's comments and questions, is it your intention to provide live commentary for the next wet dress?
Good question. I won't be able to answer where it came from, fellas, so I'm going to abstain from this question. And I already knew, somebody already linked it, that they're going to have live commentary for the next wet dress rehearsal, so I will abstain from this one. I already know the answer. Well, half of the answer.
Yeah, Cliff, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Rob.
So I believe it was WDR3. I have to go confirm exactly, but there was a point at which we were trying to pressurize the COPV tanks on the vehicle. That basically provides the helium. The tanks hold the helium that then operate your pneumatic valves and pressurized tanks. So when we were trying to pressurize those, we realized that we weren't getting the pressures we needed to fully pressurize the tanks. And that was the first indication that we had a problem, that we weren't getting enough flow into those tanks. And from there, the investigation started. And basically, the result of that was, as we were headed into WDR3, the decision was made that we would not tank the second stage because of this problem, and just tank the first stage, the core stage. And at that point, once we knew we were coming back to the VAB, it was the decision was made that we would go ahead and remove and replace that check valve at that point, so we could do a full WDR once we roll back out.
Interesting. So it's the helium commodity line, not hydrogen. So it's not that one. The helium line is this one. I think that's the right one. So that's gaseous hydrogen. I'm not sure. It could be that one too, right there. But I know that the COPVs, it has external COPVs on the ICPS rocket guy, right? So I'm guessing that that's the helium line right there, because the COPVs are between the hydrogen and oxygen tank. So I'm not sure what that one is. That could be nitrogen, or it could be HVAC. I'm thinking that that's the helium line. So it's not right there, like I said. It's right there. And it happened on wet dress rehearsal 3, which is... Yeah, that's not good. Well, at least we answered the when part. The when, why, and how is still an important thing, but if they filled the helium tanks 2 times for 2 different wet dress rehearsals, and then on the 3rd time something broke, yeah, that's not... I'd be curious at this point to know if they changed any criteria between wet dress 1, 2, and 3. Because if they changed something for wet dress 3, and it jammed, well, whatever you changed was the problem. Interesting. So, we were saying rubber was in the hydrogen line before. That's actually not right. My thing about how rubber can jam stuff up, still a thing, but it's the helium tanks, which is pneumatics. That's not cryogenics. What I said about the hydrogen lines and everything is right, but that line right there, which is on this umbilical right here. Rubber and the helium is even more concerning, no? I would put it... Synerd, I would put it slightly less concerning than hydrogen, because helium, when you compress it, it just gets hot, and that's about it. I mean, there's obviously compression and whatnot, right? But hydrogen is much more volatile under high pressures. You'll get leaks everywhere if you overpressurize a line, and that's why they purge the hydrogen line with helium before they fill hydrogen in it. Yeah. They do that on purpose. Or nitrogen. You could use nitrogen too. It's anti-geysering. That's what I've been reading about, because that's what I thought they said. But that's not right. If it's the helium line, wow, I missed a big detail. That's my fault. See what I mean? I still got a lot to learn. But that's okay. It's fine. The check valve is part of the helium system. Oh boy. Novus, I'd be... The fact that it happened on wet dress 3 and not 1 and 2 is a little bit... That's where I'd be wondering, like... okay. So that answered 1 out of 3. We know when it happened. So it happened sometime between wet dress 2 and 3. So we know when. They don't know why, and they don't know how. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, this is cool, Rocket Guy. I really enjoy this. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. This is fun. I really, really like doing this stuff.
And Irene, to the second half of your question, for wet dress, we are going to have live commentary.
Thank you. All right, our next question is...
I mean, it could be that the mobile launcher is a hunk of junk. I thought the video I saw claiming it was a crackpot theory. It's not a hunk of junk, Synerd. That video that you watched probably had to do with load limits. Long story short, SLS is the heaviest rocket ever rolled out of the VAB. Like heavy, like it is a heavy piece of equipment. Why? Well, it has 2 5-segment SRBs, and it has a core stage with 4 shuttle engines in it, right? Instead of a shuttle with 3 engines in it. And then it has an upper stage and an Orion capsule on top of that. Between the bigger core stage, the 5-segment SRBs, the upper stage, the service module, and the Orion capsule, that's way heavier than a space shuttle. Way heavier. Shuttle stack is like not nearly as heavy as this SLS stack is. So that video that you probably saw was saying that the ML is bending, and it is. That mobile launcher was designed for Ares 1, a vehicle that is literally like a quarter of the weight of an SLS Block 1. Yeah, easily a quarter of the weight. Because it's like a quarter of the launch vehicle. Who knew? You make a bigger launch vehicle, it goes further. I know. Funny story. And it also might be 4 times as heavy. I know, it's science, right? So the mobile launcher was deflecting because it's a very, very heavy launch vehicle. He said commentary, not access to control loops. Of course he did. Yeah, Rocket Guy, yeah, we're waiting for that question, yeah. My question, my press question hadn't been asked. How much is the second rollout going to cost? No one's asked that yet, but we still have 20 minutes left, so who knows? Yeah, the mobile launcher isn't junk, guys. That honestly, rubber in the valve is teething. That's another teething problem. It's nothing wrong with the design. You just got to figure out. See, like, this is the thing, guys. This is the wet dress rehearsal is like the final draft. You ever type to paper? You still make typos in the final draft? It happens. It happens. You just got to keep checking and keep checking to make sure that your final draft doesn't have any grammatical errors or typos in it, right? You just got to keep checking. And that's what they do. That's what this wet dress rehearsal is all about. You still, I mean, do you ever turn in a paper, you checked it a bunch of times, you looked it over again, and you still made spelling mistakes? It happens. Now, don't get me wrong, that should not happen when the rocket's flying. That really shouldn't. They should have everything figured out. But every spacecraft has teething problems. Every launch vehicle has teething problems. It's just how it is. Thought it was going to be Eric's, but he got blindsided by his desire to put Bill in. Yeah, Rocket Guy, and once again, he demonstrated that he has no idea how contracting for NASA works. Like, no idea. Like, you really don't know what you're talking about. It's kind of funny, actually. I mean, dude, I don't even know the exact thing, but I did get that answer right, you know? Yeah, interesting. First time that the ML is being used. You're supposed to catch these problems now, Blinga. That's the thing. Look, in an ideal scenario, the wet dress rehearsal goes off with no problems. You shouldn't really learn anything during your final draft, right? You shouldn't be learning anything when you take a final exam, for instance, at school. If you're learning stuff, then, you know, you probably didn't do it right. But once again, this isn't a final calc exam or something. This is rocket science, which calculus is a part of. But this is the factor of difficulty is way more than just a freaking calc exam, right? Like, this is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do. The factor of difficulty is way higher, or the level of difficulty, not factor, but the level of difficulty is way freaking higher. Like, way freaking higher. You know. The wet dress rehearsal here is to, you know, make sure that you're good, that you're as ready as you can be for launch, but also it's to just work out some of those little kinks that you might have in the processing flow. Like the rubber's weird. Like the torquing the bolts on the umbilical, easy fix. Easy fix, easy to change the processing flow, no problem. This one is a little more complicated. These are the kind of problems you really don't want to have. But maybe somebody just left a rubber tool in there or something, or a rubber seal or something. But yeah, this one's gonna be hard to fix. Because that's a tough problem to have. Because the troubleshooting for it is gonna take forever because you don't know where it came from. Got to figure that one out. I don't like it when I don't catch any mistakes in my final draft. It's one of those too quiet kinds of things. Bingo. That's the next thing I was going to say, Sarnerd. If everything went right with the wet dress, I'd be a little like, really? You sure? Like, I'd be like, go do it again. You know? I'd be like, go do that again, please. Yeah, this is the last thing this is the last chance to file things under the lessons learned category before entering ops or the oops. What's this oops? Don't do that oops. Yes, yes. No, what is it with the fat lady? You're obsessed with the fat lady. I would say this is practice for the finale. Yeah, Contra. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, that's probably right. Anyway, let's keep going.
From Mike Wall of Space.com.
All right, let's see.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah, just a quick question. While you've got the stack like in the VAB and kind of going over it, like, have you noticed anything else that's interesting or that kind of raised concerns, or is it just these same two issues that kind of cropped up on the pad that have gotten all of your attention?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It started off a little strange, but yeah, no, that was a good question from Mike. Really, really good one. My guess is there are probably other things, fellas. Yeah, there's probably other things. But the other things are, the other things wouldn't have impeded the previous wet dress rehearsal. There's always stuff to learn. There's always something that you're going to find. There's always something new. Once again, this is a vehicle with millions of freaking parts, including the pad, millions of parts. And then 500,000 of those parts actually fly into space. You know what I mean? I doubt that they have 2 line items to troubleshoot. I doubt that that's the only thing. There's got to be other things. I'm pretty damn sure. Now, what those oddities are, I have no idea. That's something I wouldn't know unless I worked on the project. All right, let's see. Siner, what did you say? Sometimes when I'm playing my factory building games, I get to my final draft and I catch some deeply rooted reason wrong why the whole thing won't work. Do you maybe have a process to catch those kind of things earlier? Systems engineering, Siner. Systems engineering. You know that manual that I keep beating down everybody's throats? Read the systems engineering manual. That will help. Oh yeah. I am doing an entire NASA systems engineering processing flow for my new rockets in Kerbal. All of it. I'm going to leave no stone unturned. That way those rockets won't ever kill a Kerbal. Well, I can't say that for sure. There's no certainties in spaceflight, right? They will be as safe as they possibly can for my Kerbals, and they will be able to get us missions anywhere we want in the solar system. Maximum on-orbit flexibility. That's my stakeholder expectation. Yeah, Finn, we got no eye rollers just yet. Yep. Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Rocket guy, see that launch umbilical tower? That's where they strung up thieves who felt fine. Okay. Move! Yep, I'm designing it. That's what I'm doing, guys. That's why mission mode has taken so long. I'm reading the SE manual. I have it. Well, it's in the other room with my notebook, but I used to have it right here, but I moved it into the dining room. My dining room is just a table for sketching out spacecraft ideas in 3D printers. Yeah. I don't know why I felt the need to tell you that, but hey, whatever. We're going to get a copy of that? It's free on the internet, dude. Yeah, NASA Systems Engineering. You can get a PDF for free. It's NASA, public domain. Doesn't cost you anything. I have a hard copy, though. Yeah.
So what I would say is there's nothing that popped up that is like, wow, that also occurred. Some of the other items that we've been working, we have what we call our kind of our major non-conformances that we knew we needed to work. We've been looking at some areas on the ICPS aft plate purge. Umbilical, we did have some during the WDR, some air intrusion on that boot. So we've been reseating that boot and working that. We did have an area with a GPS tracker inside the ICPS that we feel was a mobile launcher connection. So in other words, from the antenna on the mobile launcher, we weren't getting the signal back into the second stage. And we've been working that problem, and we think we got that resolved, but we need to do a retest here when we power up late this week or early next week. And then in general, we've been, like I said, there's other work we've been doing to try to reduce the amount of work we'll have to do after we come back from the next wet dress rehearsal. There was some TPS foam areas on the core stage that we're fixing. So there's other things that we're doing, again, just trying to get as much work behind us as we can, but we're not letting them become scheduled drivers to getting to the next wet dress rehearsal.
That's right. Cool. So the ICPS has a global positioning, has GPS on it, right? It's connected via ground side umbilical, which is probably part of that hydrogen gas vent line. If I had to guess, see all those other wires and stuff? Those could be just the slide wires to pull the umbilicals back. I'm not sure where the electrical connection is on the ICPS, to be 100% honest. I don't exactly know where it is. It's one of these wires. I don't know that one. But it looks like the global positioning, the GPS is interfacing, right? And it goes up here, and there's a bunch of antennas up here. And I know the antennas are up there. There's one for like windage and stuff, obviously, like pad windages, and I didn't know that works with GPS as well. That's actually really neat. I learned something. The middle one looks like a cable bundle. Well, Jim, that's the hydrogen fill-up line. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't have my electrical things near hydrogen. But that's why I'm like saying I'm not sure. I definitely wouldn't have it near oxidizer. We figured that one out. But yeah, it looks like the wires are with the hydrogen umbilical there. I could be wrong, though. Yeah, it's possible, Synerd. Yeah. That's really cool. And then, what was the other one? They had some foam. Yeah, understanding foam behavior coming off the core stage is... Yeah. Pretty sure that one's pretty well documented, but yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. Really cool. But yeah, that's what all that stuff up there is for, you know? You can see a bunch of them up there. And then these guys right here, those are cameras. That's a camera that's looking down at the rocket. Is there an oxygen vent tube on the ICPS? Yeah, it's over there. Yeah, they vent to atmosphere, Builder. No one gets upset if you vent oxygen into the atmosphere. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the other thing that we're worried about, right? Hydrogen, though, you don't want to vent that. One, because your vehicle, hydrogen pools and it goes everywhere you don't want it to go. It's like sand, but in gas form. And it makes things explode. Imagine how much more annoying sand would be if it was, coarse, rough, it gets everywhere, and it also explodes. Yeah, hydrogen does that. So they have a recirculation system. And the hydrogen meets basically a gigantic Bunsen burner that's on the side of the pad. It's over here. It's behind my head. Yeah, and that gas line right there, gaseous hydrogen line, leads to the Bunsen burner. Because if you create a vacuum with the burner, with the purge flame, it'll pull the gaseous hydrogen in a direction instead of having it pool. Thermite is sand that explodes. Well, yeah, you're right. You're right, Synerd. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is the thing that explodes, and it's more annoying than sand, isn't it? Look how deep orange the foam is now after being outside for so long. Yeah, right? By annoying, you mean fun? Yeah. No big deal. It's just rocket science. Easy fix. Banana Time, you know what? I don't like Block 1's capability, right? Like, I really wish this had the EUS to start. But I will say, that rocket is aesthetic as hell, man. That looks really nice. It's a really nice looking rocket. It really does look good, man. Like look at that thing. That is a pretty rocket. That looks like how a rocket should look, right? I don't know why. It might be just because the LVSA and the taper and everything, but that thing looks like what you'd want a rocket to look like. It looks like a freaking rocket. You know, with the boosters and you know, the launch escape tower and the taper, you know, how the core size tapers from 8.4 to 5 meters. It looks right. It looks correct. It looks like a rocket. So off topic, but I read something today. I'm coming to you for input. If not the time, I can ask again. So apparently Soyuz is incapable of reaching the orbit of the Chinese space station due to launch locations. Is it the same that Falcon 9 and Dragon is incapable of getting to the Chinese space station? No, we can get to it from Kennedy, Trojan, but I don't think that ever is going to happen. But we could. Like, you really got some Saturn V vibes from this thing, don't you? It's pretty cool. How did MSC go? Just fine. Still alive. So anyway, next question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jim Siegel of NASA Tech.
How many questions have we gotten right? I think out of the ones that I've chosen to answer, we've gotten like, what is it, 2.5 out of 3? Maybe, no, I think it's 2.5 out of 4. I think I got another one wrong. It does, Builder. Yep. I think I'm 2.5 out of 3.
Thank you for taking my question, and good luck in all the repairs that you're doing. I have a question about how many other SLS rockets and Orion capsules are in the system. In other words, how many are going to be built, and how will
There's your question, Rocket.
The construction or the work that's being done on those how will that be affected by what's going on here now in what you're doing after this last dress rehearsal? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we actually have the Artemis 2 capsule and service module at.
Oh, I wanted to listen to it. I don't know the answer to this question. I'm abstaining from this one. I can tell you what flight hardware they have, but I don't know how many. I don't know how many they plan on buying. Supposedly the books go out to Artemis 12, but they haven't bought any of that. That's the plan. So I don't know. Could Roscosmos not reach it from French Guiana? Yeah, that Soyuz pad ceased to exist after February 24th, Trojan.
Right now, and undergoing.
Rocket Guy, you said he'll mention flight hardware only and then mention that the first flight will test the rest. Okay, all right.
And testing, I think the first power on for those is right now targeted the end of May. The Artemis 3 crew module is pressure shell is down at Kennedy, getting outfitted and undergoing testing as well, along with the European service module is over in Bremen, Germany. So those three are ongoing. Some of the early parts for the next crew module are underway. So I've said it publicly. You know, it's great. We have a hardware-rich program right now in terms of what we have in the queue. And your question about how will what's going on now affect it? You know, this is a test flight that we have with Artemis 1. The reason we're doing this test flight is we need to understand how the hardware works, but also how it comes together. You know, Cliff and his team who've processed this vehicle, and the Orion and SLS teams that have watched their vehicles go through processing have a lot of lessons learned that we want to incorporate for the next vehicles to increase that processing time to a point that fits our model, that gets it to a point that we expect. Right, we want to be as efficient as we can to get that increase is more around our flight rate up. And we're going to learn a lot on this mission that then we might need to make a change or two between now and between Artemis 1 and 2. So, getting to a good flight rate from our lessons learned is something we should do between Artemis 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. So the effect is tremendous because we will have processed the vehicle.
Thank you. Our next question is from Marcia Smith of Space Policy Online.
Interesting. I mean, Rocket Guy, you basically got it right. I abstained from that question. But you said exactly, he's just going to mention the flight hardware and then go from there because a block buy seems to be contingent on Artemis 1 working correctly. Or what they're going to do seems to be very contingent off of the success of the Artemis 1 mission. Which is the other reason why you can't make any freaking mistakes, because they have Congress so far up their tail they could be using NASA as a sock puppet.
Thanks so much. My question is for Jim, and it has to do with the new mobile launcher that you're building. Administrator Nelson was very critical of Bechtel and their work on that one. Can you give us an update on the schedule for the new one? And are you learning anything from the exercise with the current mobile launcher with the wet dress rehearsal that can be applied to that one? For example, on these hydrogen umbilicals, is there some new way of designing them so you don't have to have this retorquing issue on the new mobile launcher?
Yeah. Proctological dentistry. Yep. Yeah, I gotta listen to it one more time.
1 and 2, and 2 and 3.
From Marcia Smith of Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. My question is for Jim, and it has to do with the new mobile launcher that you're building. Administrator Nelson was very critical of Bechtel and their work on that one. Can you give us an update on the schedule for the new one? And are you learning anything from the exercise with the current mobile launcher with the wet dress rehearsal that can be applied to that one? For example, on these hydrogen umbilicals, is there some new way of designing them so you don't have to have this retorquing issue on the new mobile launcher?
Okay. I'll throw my hat into the ring on this one. The questions that I've chosen to answer, I think I'm at 2.5 out of 3. So I'll throw my hat into this one. So for the fourth one that I think I can answer, the schedule for the second mobile launcher denotes that it should be available in 2025. I think it's 2025. 2025 or 2026 on that second mobile launcher. The reason is because the first 3 Artemis missions are flying with the Block 1 SLS variant. The Block 2 or the Block 1B SLS variant doesn't need to be available until Artemis 4 when they start expanding Gateway. So 2025 or 2026, it's somewhere around there. You really don't need it until then. You can use the one that you have now. Now, in terms of will you learn anything? Yeah, of course they'll learn things. But here's the thing. What you learn about this mobile launcher doesn't mean you should change the design on the second one. Remember, your job here isn't it's not SpaceX. Your job isn't to make it the best it can be. Your job is to make it work. At NASA, that's what you got to do. And SpaceX does this to an extent. The second mobile launcher, for example, torquing the bolts down. You wouldn't want to design around that because the bolts will come untorqued because the laws of physics don't change. But you'll have the processing flow already figured out because of the first one for the second one, so that problem would never happen on the second one as long as you built it in the exact same way. See what I'm talking about? So it would actually retire risk more if you just made sure you torqued those bolts down and built the second ML the same exact way, build the same thing. That would mean that all your wet dress rehearsal testing for the core stage with Artemis 1 would work on the mobile launcher for Artemis 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 down the road, anytime you're using that second new mobile launcher that they want to build. At least I think that's what's going on. Let's see how right I am. I think 2025 for when the second one should be ready to go, and I think they're not going to change anything on it because that retires risk. You don't need to introduce new criteria into the design.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. So I'll start with the back end. You know, the retorquing is part of the design because we have soft goods in there, right? And soft goods behave the way soft goods behave. So I think what Cliff said, using the lessons learned from the shuttle, is helping us a lot there. So I think we've optimized it, as I mentioned in the last question. We'll continue to learn from it, and we'll do that. As far as ML2, we work closely with Bechtel all the way up their management chain to continue to get our path and schedule forward on ML2. I wish I could describe to you the priority for me, other than to say that I talk ML2, say, at least once a day, and where we're going. We're working with Bechtel to get a update to their cost and schedule in the late May timeframe, which we're trying to get through our final design, the complexity of this design, and a 12 million pound system that has modes that are induced by the vehicle is incredibly complex. We're looking in the latter part of the summer to finalize the design and move out on the heavy construction pieces. So our next window into a word back from our contractor is the end of May. I will tell you that the team down at Kennedy, led by Daryl Foster, is working every day with Bechtel to drive out the technical issues that remain to get us on a path to have Artemis 4 in a reasonable time frame. But that schedule we have to get from them at the end of May. But I'll tell you, it is a high priority all the way up through, as you noted, right? The administrator is able to talk about it at the hearing, so he is on top of it as well. But it's a big concern for us.
Thank you.
He did say Artemis 4. Artemis 4's net is 2025 or 2026. It really depends. I'm going to say more 2026 than anything. But he talked about soft commodities. Soft commodities, it doesn't matter. Torquing the bolts is actually, and keeping the design the same, is going to make it safer. Despite what you might think. Like, that's something that you can't really engineer around. You can't engineer around the laws of physics. They're laws. You have to conform to them. I don't know. What do you guys think? Partial credit? Yes, no? I'd say partial credit. I think I'm 3 out of 4. I didn't get it exactly right. And once again, I'm holding myself to very, very stringent criteria here because there's no room for partial credit in rocket science, to be honest. It's either, not partial credit. There's no, the reason why I'm using partial credit is because, actually, it should be get it right or get it wrong, to be honest. But I'm trying to be a little bit easy on myself, just a little bit. So I was at 2.5 out of 3. Now I'm 3 out of 4, which is not bad. That's not bad. Batting 750. It's okay. Horror scenario: SLS blows up during ascent, or even worse, the capsule burns down during re-entry or something else, other catastrophic scenario. What happens then? You really got to figure out why, Swishio. Is it a design flaw? Did somebody not torque a bolt down correctly? It depends on what caused the failure, to be honest. Ideally, honestly, failure is not good. It's not a good thing, but it depends. Is it something as simple as not torquing the bolt down? Now, why did you not torque the bolts down? Were they supposed to be torqued down? You know what I mean? It could be 1,000 bajillion different things. The first thing that you would have to do, the next step in that highly unlikely scenario, is the next step in that highly unlikely scenario is figuring out what caused it and why. Fault tree analysis usually is the usually is where you go if you have a problem like this on the pad. But so, see, I'd like to add, dude, like, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, okay? I'd like to add, but how you're thinking about that problem is defensive thinking. You can't think like that with rocket science. Something will blow up if you think like, oh, you know, like, what happens if it blows up? Well, I don't think NASA intends for the vehicle to explode, you know, on the way up. You don't plan for that. You plan for it to work. You know, you should halfway kind of be expecting that might happen, and, you know, you should plan for that accordingly, like the launch escape system, for instance. That's a pretty good example. But that's really defensive thinking. You can't think defensively like that with rocket science, because if you do, you know, you're engineering off your back foot, so to speak. That's not a good way to do that. That's not a good way to think about this. Would that be enough of an excuse to cancel SLS? Unlikely. How long is Orion spending at the moon? On the Artemis 1 mission, it should be out there for either a week or 2 weeks, Hand. I mean, regarding the bolts, there's tech out there to prevent bolts from coming loose. Wedge locking washers, safety washers. They seem like simple modifications that wouldn't introduce much risk. Then again, I don't know how that reacts with frangible fasteners. Yeah, Signer, that's honestly irrelevant. If the design didn't call for any of that stuff and you introduce it, then you're introducing risk. If the bolts were designed to, if they were designed in a way where they needed to be retorqued constantly, first of all, that's NASA's fault for not doing it right. But you don't want to introduce like thread sealer into something where thread sealer isn't required. You don't need Loctite and a nylock nut at the same time. That's redundant. In fact, that could get both things to not work correctly, right? You don't put anti-seize on something where you should put Loctite. You don't want to introduce anything into the design that wasn't intended to be there. So, like, even if that was the case, even if you could Loctite those bolts down, you would have to make sure that the Loctited version of said bolt on the carrier umbilical would go through the exact same testing criteria. You'd have to redo a shoot ton of work. That would just delay things. And once again, you might not have to torque the bolts down, right? Now you don't have to torque the bolts down every time, right? That's great. But you took an extra 6-7 months trying to figure that stuff out. You could have just launched and made sure the bolts were torqued down. It's an extra 5 minutes. See what I'm talking about? You're gonna spend 6 months of downtime engineering a fix for that when you could just have a guy with a torque them down every 30 days while the umbilical's connected. I like that. I like the torquing down solution. That's way easier than trying to re-engineer the damn bolt. That doesn't make any sense. See what I'm talking about? It's not that you're wrong. You probably could. But now you're introducing deviance into your engineering, which was not engineered on the original analysis. The analysis didn't call for Loctite there. If the engineering didn't call for Loctite there, don't put Loctite there. If you do, now you have to go back to step 1 and re-engineer everything. That could delay, and that's a hydrogen core stage umbilical. That'll delay. Now you have to redesign the mobile launcher. Now you have to redesign the core stage. Now you have to test all that stuff again. It screws your testing completely. Don't change it. You don't change it. You kind of have to, there's a point where you can change the design where the design is very fluid. And then once you complete what's called a critical design review, freeze the design, build it. That's, you don't change things. Now processing things you can change because you don't know how to put the stupid thing together. Which is why NASA chose to change the processing flow problem instead of saying, oh, redesign the bolt. It's not a good idea to do that. JB weld or nothing, yep. Is Bechtel involved in the same thing at 3 Mile Island? I have no idea. Nah, get an angle grinder to grind that dang thing up. I mean, if we're working on an old XJ Cherokee, you know that's the solution. But not on a multi-billion-dollar rocket, please. It'd be like taking an angle grinder to a Ferrari. What are you, nuts?
Our next question is from George Borski of Gizmodo.
Boom.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for doing this. Jim, you mentioned during your opening comments that you wanted to be realistic and upfront in terms of the upcoming wet dress, indicating that it actually may take more than one attempt to perform this. Now, this, unless I'm mistaken, this is the first time I'm hearing this kind of language, that previously the understanding was that it was just going to be this one attempt, and then you would set it all up, and we'd have the Artemis 1 mission underway. I'm wondering, is SLS proving to be a more complicated beast than you guys had assumed? Is this more? Are you finding these problems to be unexpected? And I'm wondering, or perhaps is this just a communications issue, and that there always was this potential? I mean, I do recall you gave us a bit of a history lesson when it came to the shuttle program, but again, this is the first I'm hearing that that there will have to be perhaps a multiple wet dress. And a second question.
Oh my God! See this guy? He's like, oh, it's a Is it a communications problem? It's really not their job to tell you how systems engineering works. Okay, next question.
Having to do with the various stages, Charlie Blackwell Thompson at a previous media teleconference outlined 3 different possible scenarios for the subsequent wet dress. I'm assuming that with the June wet dress and then an August launch that you will roll this thing back to the VAB, but I wouldn't mind having just some confirmation on that, on the steps that will happen following a subsequent successful wet dress. Sorry for my long-winded questions, but I look forward to your responses.
The second question wasn't that bad. The first one, oh, well, you only said there was going to be one wet dress rehearsal and then launch. No, that's not what they said. What they said is if the wet dress rehearsal goes right, then we're going to launch. If everything goes right, and that depends on launch date. That's why they never committed to a launch date. SLS has never committed to any particular launch date, ever. It's been this month or this month. And it also, once again, it's dependent on the lunar windows. The moon has to be in the right spot. You launch SLS, the moon isn't in the right spot, you launch the thing into the sun. Great. And not, when I say launch it into the sun, what I'm referring to is what's called a heliocentric orbit, meaning it's orbiting around the sun, i.e. you're never getting it back. Yeah. And yeah, of course they're going to roll back after the second wet dress rehearsal. Like, yeah, that... You have to basically mimic the rollout process. There are the other SLSs that come down the road won't need a wet dress rehearsal. The wet dress rehearsal should give you a good baseline. And as long as the behavior of the vehicle reflects the behavior that you've seen in the wet dress rehearsal, then you should be good to launch. Like I said, it's not a communications issue. You just don't listen. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick. Like,
hey,
hey.
There's a big Speed Motors box for you downstairs.
Yes.
I was gonna pick it up and bring it upstairs, but my legs hurt and it was heavy.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it.
It's exhaust headers for the 59.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can handle those.
Can you just like put it in the inside?
No.
You can't just put it in a doorway?
My legs hurt.
Okay, I'll take care.
I know that sounds real stupid. But like going up and down the stairs once, my legs hurt real bad. Cause I worked out yesterday and I think I probably did like 30 or 40 squats. And now everything hurts.
Okay, I'll grab it in a little bit.
Alright, I'm sorry, babe.
No, you're not.
What? My legs hurt!
My leg! My leg!
My legs don't work!
That is a lie.
No, it's not for once.
My leg! Well, they're my exhaust headers, so I'll go get them in a second. I'll show them to you. Rocket Guy, what were you saying about this? So no, it's not more complicated. It's just a complex new system, and there are teething issues. No, it's not a comms issue. Yes, we will roll back because it still takes work to get the launch right. I'm with you. I agree. Yeah, agreed across the board. This guy does. Rocket Guy, I don't mean to call out this guy, the Gizmodo reporter. I don't mean to be a jerk, but this is not. Say like. This is peak of Mount Stupid behavior. Engineers can detect this stuff, I swear. Like, it is immediately apparent that this person does not know what they're talking about. They don't pay attention. You don't listen. You know, and then the guy has the gall to suggest that it's a communications problem on NASA's part. And Also, that NASA's analysis on the vehicle, it could be not satisfactory, which is hilarious to me. That's... Wow. Wow. See, this is what I mean, guys. This is space Twitter nonsense. You think you know better than NASA? You do not know better than NASA. No way. That's Bush League, man. Yeah, that's Bush League. Dude, if I was Jim, I would curse this guy out, but Jim's not going to do it because he's Jim Free. He's not going to do that.
Sure, George. So I'll start with the second question. We will roll back again before launch. We had the three options that we were looking at. Our decision was to do the minimum that we needed to do to get back out to the pad as soon as possible, which is the path that we're on right now, which means we will roll back again. We have some work that we've deferred to the other side of wet dress, and then we have our final preps for launch, which include some of the flight termination system testing and installations and work with the range. So we will roll back again. As to your first question, I wouldn't say that SLS is more complicated. We knew it was complicated. Certainly the check valve was something we didn't anticipate. It doesn't have anything to do with complexity. It's an issue that happened. I think some of the things we've seen about how we load locks and the interactions on the ground is something we didn't expect. But I will tell you that when we were able to start moving locks on both the second and third attempt, the team really understood the issue about the column of the hot locks flowing down from the ICPS and affecting how we were loading into the core stage. They understood that, I'd say, nearly immediately, and then came up with a fix. They talked about it, and then we implemented it. So I think it's one of those things that we iterate on. We're trying to be upfront and tell you now, hey, we found some things, and we're not just going to take for granted that the next time we roll out there, everything's going to go great. We're trying to make sure that that, understand why we think that, because of what we've seen on these first three attempts. And I think you'll continue to hear from us that level of realism and approach, because I think the team has had it before, but also they need our support. And I say our, I mean those of us that sit here to headquarters to say, hey, let's get this right and get an optimistic schedule, so that we're sharing that with our stakeholders, of which you are all included in that, and also that we're managing the workload on this team, which has been going at it at a pretty high level for quite a while now.
Thank you. Our next question.
Yeah, see, that was a Bush League question. I'm growing as we listen to more of these press conferences, guys, and I've been covering these NASA press conferences for years now. We really started to do it a lot in 2017, and I do it as much as we can on here. And if it's one thing I've noticed, the press, I hear the press ask so what I do is all these people that ask the questions, sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time I do this. I go back, and not only do I read their question, I listen to their question, I go see the article that they wrote about said question, because usually it's an article based off of one question, which is hilarious to me. Yeah, I usually go read the press clippings about what these people report and what they were told. I've been doing that since about 2018, when Jim Bridenstine called Eric Berger out during a press conference. Do you guys remember that town hall where he called him out? Huh. Oh, you. Yeah, great. You remember that? I've been doing it since that press conference. I don't know if that was 2017 or 2018. Yeah, Jim Bridenstine, the last NASA administrator, called out a reporter one time. It was pretty funny, and he was right to do it. So I usually read the articles that these people write about it. Most of them are pretty damn good. I mean, you know who have a bone to pick, if anything, right? With that being said, because I do this, it's really, really, really easy to figure out who's asking the gotcha questions. Gotcha. Oh, you didn't consider this. Oh, have you thought about this? No, you probably didn't. NASA's stupid. Cancel SLS. It's really easy to spot those questions. People do it with Elon. Same thing. Remember, he got asked a gotcha question about COVID, and he was just like, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Next question. Like, people do that. They do that stuff. They do it with SpaceX. They do it with NASA. They do it with Boeing. A lot with Boeing. In fact, to an unequal amount, right? I know it's really easy to spot who's asking the gotcha questions. And that's why I'm not afraid to call this stuff out. Like, I know that was a gotcha question, and it's a Bush League question. You're not interested in SLS. You're not interested in You're not interested in the engineering. You're not interested in anything. You're trying to stir stuff. It's really easy to spot. You know? It's really, really easy to see the gotcha people. Like, screw you, man. Like, are you really so high and mighty to think that NASA may have, like, underestimated it? We know what the implication there is. You know, NASA's in over their head. Cancel SLS. That's the implication. It's pretty obvious. Yeah, you can tell who's there for the news and who's there for the headline. Bingo. That's right, Neuro. That's why Tim Dodd gets an audience with Elon very easily, because Elon knows that Tim is there for the tech. He's there to ask questions about Starship and nothing else. That's why Tim gets to talk to Elon Musk and not any other reporters. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Metroid. It's real. Like I said, peak of Mount Stupid. It's really easy to spot this stuff nowadays. I've been doing this and don't get me wrong, you shouldn't gatekeep. We shouldn't not gatekeep. We shouldn't go pitchforking the guy. Let him ask his stupid question, whatever. But the reason why I even bring this up is to not say, look, I know more than this guy about space. He asks stupid questions, right? That's not the reason why I bring this up. The reason why I bring this up is to show this type of behavior and show that, dude, if you're in a scenario, it's a life lesson here. If you're in a scenario where you're asking people that run, like, there's clearly people here that know more than you, to not be an assuming piece of trash. It's not about the gotcha question. It's about learning. That's super important. These folks that ask the gotcha questions, they don't give a crap about learning. And if they don't give a crap about learning, why are you in a NASA press conference? See what I mean? You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't get the gotcha question. You know what I mean? Like, that shows me that you have no interest. You have no interest in the subject matter. And, you know, it's important to be introspective. I've caught myself doing this before. I don't know more. I don't know more than them. You don't know more than nobody here does. Nobody knows more than NASA as an entity. It's impossible. Right? You know, people can think they read the Rogers Commission or the Columbia Accident Investigation Board and think they know everything about risk assessment. No, that's not how that works. You don't know better, right? Like, you can't tell me that one singular entity on the internet knows more than an entire spaceflight organization that's gone the furthest in human history. Like, that's not how that works at all. Yeah, Hokie, I don't like those people. I really, yeah. If you know, you got to axe to grind, frick you. Go away. And don't get me wrong, people can ask hard questions. There's a fine line between a hard question and a gotcha question. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, you just got your press pass, right? You just got your press pass there. You just shoot from the hip when you're talking to the lead engineer of NASA's Exploration Systems program. Like, yep, just shoot from the hip, right? Great, good. Like I said, the reason why I tell you guys about this is to be introspective. If you catch yourself doing this, stop. Stop. The only person that you're going to make look stupid is yourself.
Question is from Ken Kramer of Facebook Post.
All right, let's go. Next question.
Oh, hi. Thank you for doing this and taking my question, and good luck with everything in the future. My question, I think, is for Cliff about the gaseous nitrogen work with Air Liquide. I'm wondering, since this impacted two of your wet dress rehearsals, if you might be verifying that this system is fully operational and able to support the wet dress before you actually start the countdown, rather than find this out during the countdown? Thank you.
I gotta listen to it again, Novus. I was reading what you're saying. Sometimes even NASA doesn't know. That's why lessons learned is a thing. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and once again, Novus, that in itself right there, was there stuff that you didn't anticipate? That seems to imply that the question is either you know everything about the launch vehicle or you know nothing about the launch vehicle. If someone asks me a question like that, I will immediately know that they know nothing about spaceflight and nothing about systems engineering and nothing about how anything works. If I get asked a question like that, I'm going to give you you ask a first grade question, I'm going to give you a first grade answer because I'm assuming you don't know anything about it. I can get these questions. I know when people ask me gotcha questions all the freaking time. And most of it's a joke. You guys are really good. Like, most of it is just people joking, which is great. I really appreciate it. The vast majority of here, like 95% of the people here, ask really good questions. You know? But, like, if somebody asks me, like, how did we land on the moon? I'm going to assume they know nothing about spaceflight. Right? So start from square one. Whereas if somebody asks, oh, how does the pintle injector system on the LMDE work? How did that thing work? If you're asking me how the injection mechanism on a lunar module descent engine works, I'm going to assume you know some things. And that's what I mean about knowing you guys. I tailor my questions. Why is the external tank orange? Because that's the color of the insulation. All right, let me listen to Ken's question again.
And good luck with everything in the future. My question, I think, is for Cliff about the gaseous nitrogen work with Air Liquide. I'm wondering, since this impacted 2 of your wet dress rehearsals, if you might be verifying that this system is fully operational and able to support the wet dress before you actually start the countdown, rather than find this out during the countdown. Thank you.
That's an interesting question. He's asking if they're going to make sure that the liquid nitrogen systems that flow to SLS, that the ones that didn't work last time, if they're going to verify that it's going to work. The real kicker is that you also have to understand that done things cannot be known until after testing. That is the worst part of... is that some things cannot be known until after testing. That's the worst part of systems engineering. Yep. So Rocket Guy, Ken's asking if they're going to fix Air Liquide's nitrogen delivery systems before the next wet dress rehearsal. The immediate prevalent thing in my mind, fellas, is that the nitrogen systems that flow to the pad are a one-way street. The nitrogen systems that flow to the pad for SLS or any rocket are a one-way street. Now, why? How do I know that? Have I ever seen these pipes? No, I've never seen these pipes. But if it wasn't a one-way system, implying they could move nitrogen to the pad and back to the Air Liquide facility, why would they have had this problem with the wet dress rehearsal 2 times in a row? That tells me that this is a problem that can only be, they can only do flow tests when the rocket is out on the pad when they're doing testing. Most likely because it's part of the countdown sequencing. I think that's what's going on. If they could test it without SLS being on the pad, they would have done that already. Right? So Ken's question is actually pretty good. You needed to turn some gears. So I honestly think that... So here's my final answer. My final answer is no. They can't test that without SLS being attached to the pad based off of the prior testing criteria. They can't flow nitrogen when there's no rocket to flow nitrogen into. My guess is the nitrogen systems are a one-way street. They can't flow nitrogen from pad back to the Air Liquide facility. That's my guess. Let's see.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We will be doing testing, verification, validation testing of the upgrades to the system. What we have done is our management team, our technical management team has worked with Air Liquide and our facility management director here to develop test procedures that will allow us to exercise the system in a way that'll basically stress it more than we would expect during our WDR and launch campaigns. So when I say that, what I'm talking about is they've added margin to ensure the flow rates can be met. The test will actually run for 32 hours, and that's about a 10% margin over what we would expect to need during the actual launch campaign. So yes, we will be testing. The team's been very involved with Air Liquide in developing that test plan, and we will be flowing nitrogen all the way out to the pad. Obviously, we will not have a vehicle there and a mobile launcher, but we'll basically put dampers out at the interface to the mobile launcher and be able to adjust and regulate to ensure we're getting the back pressures that the mobile launcher and vehicle would put on the system, again, in an effort to make sure we're stressing the system to meet our needs.
Huh. Well, I'm wrong. That's incorrect on my part. So what am I at? I'm at 3.5 out of 5. Not bad. Now, okay, so they can test without SLS out on the pad, and it appears that the nitrogen line is still a one-way street, and they need the right back pressures, but they can test without the rocket on the pad. Now, okay, that's cool. I don't mind being wrong. That's fine. Now, immediately the next question that's coming is, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you know this earlier? But remember, we don't know better than NASA. Now, well, okay, why didn't you test this earlier? Why didn't you verify this earlier? How the frick do you know how much nitrogen you need to flow? You won't know how much nitrogen you need to flow until there's a rocket on the pad and you figure out how much nitrogen you need to flow. Because, once again, why else would they only catch this problem during a wet dress rehearsal? The only real thing that makes sense is the reason why they didn't catch this problem because they didn't know it was a problem, or else they would have caught it. Right? They would have caught it. So that tells me that they didn't know how much nitrogen they needed to flow, nor, this is the more important part, did they get the right flow rates? They didn't know how much they needed to flow and in what quantity. How much per minute did you need to flow? Because that really depends with a cryogenic propellant. That's really important. Or not a cryogenic propellant, commodity, because it's nitrogen. Which I personally feel like they should have known through analysis, but I'm definitely not a plumbing guy. Yeah, well, Rocket Guy, it's a third party, right? It's a third party, so NASA's analysis, what NASA would have done, because Air Liquide is a third party contractor, they would have said, hey, Air Liquide, can you flow this much nitrogen this fast for this long? And they probably said, yeah, that should be fine. And then it wasn't. You could ballpark it due to napkin math based on what the system could need at full demand. Yeah. Yep. Well, don't they know the flow rate from the test firing? Didn't they use nitrogen there too? At Stennis Finn, at the Green Run? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's an entirely different launch pad in another state. That's not designed to launch the vehicle. And the gaseous nitrogen might be supplied by NASA. It might be supplied by a different contractor. Different system. You know, do your drains clog in your house easier or better than another house down the street? Well, I don't know. But you're using water the entire time. You both have faucets. See what I'm talking about? It's plumbing, remember. Like, does my faucet flow more water than the faucet in the house next door? Maybe. Who knows? We're both flowing water. We both have a sink that has the same amount of... Maybe say we have the same size sink, but a different faucet, different plumbing. Point is that it's a different thing. It's a test stand, not a launch pad. And the nitrogen is being supplied from a different area. Plumbing is completely different. Like, I'm talking physically. The pipes are different lengths. They're different... They're probably not even the same pipe. You know what I mean? Well, they might be the same pipe. That probably is standardized, but... See what I'm talking about? That's a good question, though, Finn. That was a good question. That wasn't a gotcha question. That was a good one. Yeah, Signer... Once again, I guess, like, honestly, I'd be a little concerned that they weren't able to get this right on the first try. But, see, here's the other thing. You're going to run into problems like this. This happens. This happens. You go to the contractor. Hey, can you run this much nitrogen for this long to fill up our super big moon rocket? Oh, yeah, I can get that done. And then it goes to happen, and they don't be able to get it done. Hey, what happened? Oh, I don't know. We got to look into some things. What you do there, this isn't this isn't a reality damn TV show. You don't go, wow, you're an idiot. I'm going to find another nitrogen supplier. It's not freaking like watching American Chopper or something where people just yell at each other. It's not how NASA works. So you got to go work with the supplier. If I was NASA, I'd want to know exactly why that went wrong. All right, cool. Let's figure out why that happened. Let's figure out what we need to do to fix it, and let's make sure that it works the next time. Simple as that. What are you going to do? Uncouple your nitrogen lines from pad 39B and attach it to another nitrogen supplier down the hill or down the road? No, that's not how this works at all. That's not how this works at all. And it might not even be Air Liquide's fault. Maybe NASA did something wrong with the analysis. Who knows? I don't think they did, but... Snackless, what's up? They also service more than just 39B. Oh, this is Novus. They also service more than just 39B, but they'll be able to test in a roundabout way. Yep. Yeah. Snackless, what's new with Artemis? So, Snackless, what I'm doing here is I'm answering the press's questions from the Artemis 1 media teleconference. I'm answering the questions, I'm answering the press's questions, and I'm seeing how accurate I am. I think out of the questions that I could answer, I think I'm 3.5 out of 5. I'm doing okay. Not partial credit was awarded for a couple of questions. They'll only have estimates before it's actually there. It sounds like they found that they need more than expected, or Air Liquide underestimated what their system is capable of. Responsibility falls to Air Liquide since it's their system, but NASA shares some blame for not verifying that the system doesn't meet their needs, or they undershot the estimates. It could be any one of those things, Novus. The fact that NASA is on this problem like flies on poop tells me that it probably is a combination of things, you know? Yeah, so let's get on to the next question. I think I got it. So I didn't get that question right. So out of the 5 questions I've answered, I've gotten 3.5. There's probably some jawboning happening to put it in Bill's terms. Yep. So EJ has a hole-in-the-wall restaurant rating for answering press's questions? Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Our next question is from Stephen Clark of Spaceflight Now.
Oh, Stephen's asked a lot of questions.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Sorry for that glitch earlier. Just wanted to follow up on an earlier question from Irene. I think Jim Free mentioned there will be commentary for the next WDR. Will this be like on NASA TV, or are you talking about the Twitter updates that we saw for the previous WDR attempts? And also, what's the target date that you're looking at for returning the SLS to 39B? Thanks.
Stephen, I can answer the question about the commentary. Right now, we're looking at having that on the YouTube stream, but we're still working through those details. So we'll make sure to share that with you all when we've worked all those plans out.
And then based on the schedule going back out to the pad, it's, Cliff mentioned the work that we have and the things we need to understand about, especially about the check valve, and then the getting the nitrogen system up and running and tested. So that puts us probably in the late May timeframe for rolling out and a wet dress in early June. It's about, Cliff, correct me, like 12 to 14 days once we get out to the pad before we can do a wet dress.
Yeah, you're correct, Jim.
All right, thank you. Our next question is from
Yeah, I abstained from that one. The media, that's not something I can really answer based off of systems engineering. So I'm still 3.5 out of 5 right now. So not bad. I'm convinced from that comment now that they just didn't put the effort into or couldn't get the process finished in time to provide commentary on the first attempt. Yeah, most likely, Devlin. Yeah.
Daniel Reguera from our Drone UI.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muchas gracias. Thank you for taking my question. We have a really great, large audience in Spanish. You told that the next days, probably dates for the launch will be in August. If during the August window it is not possible to launch, when would be the next opportunity?
Yeah, so we have launched.
The window is the beginning of the third week of September after that, because it's usually 3 to 3.5. It's not perfect. So actually, it could be second to third week of September, I think, is the next optimal window. And I think the end of September, if I'm remembering right. I haven't even looked that far into the charts. The only reason I was looking at August and got the August one even remotely right is because I looked at the charts the other day for August, because I think they were going to go in August. I agree, Swishio, yeah.
Launch periods, planned for the entire rest of the year based on our conditions, which I'll remind everybody, our conditions for when we launch is that we have a daylight landing, which drives our when we launch, and our and the orbital mechanics drive it as well. But it's driven by when we launch so that we can land in the daylight. But we have launch periods planned, through the end of the year.
Thank you.
Wow, that was super vague. Oh man, I have to go look at the charts. I'm gonna, dude, that was not the response I was expecting. I don't know. Let's say 3.5 out of 6.
It is from Celeste Otolski from Polish Public Television.
Dobre.
Hi, and thank you for taking my question. So, what was the most unexpected problem you encountered during wet dress rehearsal and the whole testing?
Sounds like Max. That guy sounds like he's from the same part of Poland as the guy that sets up all the Friday night racing. Sounds exactly the same. That's kind of funny, actually. Oh, man. So the most unexpected problem, let's say rubber in that check valve probably isn't ideal.
What was? I'm sorry. What was the most unexpected?
Yes, that's right.
Wow. I would say probably the interactions between the ground and the flight system, and learning how that interaction drove us to change our plans. The example I gave earlier about the LOX loading would be my take. I'll let Cliff weigh in here too.
Well, I guess I would agree with that, Jim, as well as finding the hydrogen leak. Again, that's never something you want to see, but that was something we were not anticipating. But again, we were able to quickly, what I feel, diagnose that, and hopefully got that resolved, and we'll find out during the next WDR. And I would say the check valve is turning out to be a little more. Again, it's not. During the testing, we had a way to continue with testing, but that's turning out that finding that root cause is turning into a little more of a challenge for us.
I would say I got that right. Check valve was the most important problem. Jim did talk about ground side, vehicle side interfacing because it's the first time they're testing it, but I would call that right. What would you say? What say you, chat? Am I 4 for 7? Or 4? Well, no, it'd be 4.5 out of 7. Right, Spins? Okay, cool. You are 9.5, brother. Correct. All right, cool. 4.5 out of 7. Not bad, not bad. That's better than I did last time, but there might be more questions. They basically said everything, so yes, correct. All right, cool.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. We'll take it from Manuel Mazzanti from Debate.
Hi, how are you? I'm Manuel Mazzanti, covering the space program in Spanish. You just mentioned that we do have launch windows beyond August. We used to have the information from May, June, and July with the specific dates. And I understand we have a July 26th, August 9th, which I'm assuming would be the last day of the early August. Then you mentioned August 24th, August 25th. That window is only 2 days, or it extends until the end of August. And I wonder if we can have precise dates towards the end of the year. Thank you.
That date runs for a couple of days. It runs for a couple of days. It's not 23, 24, 25. I'm pretty damn sure. I'm pretty sure it goes till Saturday on that weekend, but I could be wrong. Once again, Jim actually said something that I didn't know from the last question, that they want to land in the daylight. So that, on top, like, first and foremost, it's always been about the moon being in the right spot. You can't launch the rocket and have the moon not be there and then miss it, right? Having landing in the daylight also being criteria for that is going to shrink the window. But yeah, I've looked at the charts. They're already shrunken down. I'm pretty sure that window goes to the end of the week. And once again, in terms of the rest of the year, guys, it depends. It's usually the later half because the moon. It's usually on a monthly basis because the moon, does that whole orbiting thing, right? So, and how long does it take for the moon to do an orbit? It's about a month, give or take. But some months have more days than others. So it's like every 3.5 weeks you get a good launch window. But here's the thing. They have 2 different types of mission profiles for Artemis 1. A lot of people don't know this. There's 2 types of mission profiles. One of the mission profiles has Orion staying out at the moon for a week. The other one has it staying out there for 20 days. These early launch windows, like the guy said that launch window from July 24th to August 4th, that one right there, that's a 1-week window. The ones that are in the 3rd and 4th week, or the 3rd week of every month, those are the ideal windows. That's the long duration mission. And that's what NASA is going to try and achieve. They want to get that capsule out there for as long as they can. But if for whatever reason they need to do it for a week, they'll do it for a week. I don't know if they're going to say that. They probably won't. But who knows? Let's see.
Sure. So the launch period 25, the first day is August 23rd. That launch period runs through August 29th. So it's multiple. It runs to August 29th, and then we have a break in 25.
Yeah, not bad, right? Your boy knows that. He did, Cajun. He's not talking about the early window.
Launch period 25 that then picks up on September 2nd and ends September 6th. I think Catherine Hamilton's going to follow up on the remaining launch periods with you.
Yep, you can reach out to me by email, and I'll provide more details on that. And so that's all the time that we have for questions.
Hey, I got that last question right. So I'm at 5.5 out of 8. Not bad. Rocket Guy, how'd you do? They don't know the charts off the top of their head, Spacer. The reason why is that they're not thinking about that right now. They're not thinking that far out. If you plan to launch the rocket in August, you're not planning for the launch window in October. That's the reason why they're just like, oh yeah, well, chickadee wheel. They're probably just going to send that guy the charts that I found. You weren't counting? I did 5? 5.5 out of 8. Not bad. Not bad. Or was it 4.5? I don't know. Got about half of them right, let's just say. 5.5 out of 8. Not bad. Good boy. So that was your does EJ know how to answer press questions about spaceflight correctly hour. Hope you enjoyed it. That's there are some other things with space news, but the SLS thing is what I wanted to do today. I wanted to go check that press conference. IMO, the score is not important. We did a great job discussing the answers. Well, Finn, that's part of it. Part of it is, part of it is you guys understanding this stuff. That's why I go through it. I know the answers to these questions, but the reason why I sit down and I break it down and I explain things and I try to gauge myself against NASA is, one, to make sure I'm peddling the right information. 2, to make sure I understand it. And 3, to make sure that I can teach it to you guys so you guys learn something. I didn't, and I want a refund. Here, I got a refund right here. Just here. It's right here. Ready? Hey, where'd you? Oh, you're gone. I can't. Your message got deleted. Sorry, I can't give you your refund. That was a D rating. Yeah, Bren, I know a good deal, but I don't know all of it. That's for sure. Still got a lot to learn.